Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this Otago Regional Council meeting on 29th of June 2022. Before we start, there's two things I want to mention. Firstly, this is the first council meeting that our interim CE has attended. So on behalf of us all, whether you're in the chamber or on Zoom, we extend a warm welcome to Brian. Great to have you on board. I know that you've hit the ground running and literally, and you've absorbed a lot in a relatively short space of time. You've been out and about in the region as well. So pleased that you're settling in relatively quickly. And as I say, we're really pleased to have you on board. So thank you. Moving on to the second item I just need to mention is around, we were informed of the sad news of Matt Hickey passing away. I think it was it was on the 20th of June, I believe. And for those, most of us in this room would know of Matt's expertise in those complex, challenging water permit processes. And he was a very skilled and talented guy, and really just wanted to acknowledge his sad passing. And we were obviously all thinking of his wife, partner, and daughter, and the extended whānau during the days, weeks, and months ahead. I'll hand over to Kate if you wanted to say make some comment as well.
I'd like to also acknowledge it wasn't just water. I think Matt did a wonderful job on pest eradication. He was a wonderful supplier to his family of duck, pig, and deer, venison. But I did want to, and I've just written something because I'd rather do it properly. Matt was a wonderful science communicator who managed to open the door to otherwise hard to reach people to get effective and knowledge-based change. He could open any farmer's door and be welcome and help them understand their environment, and he would learn from that experience. He was vastly respected across all parties for his practical approach, and this was exhibited on Saturday at his funeral, where the legal profession, doc, farmers, fish and game, and ORC, both old and new, staff and governance, were in the same room. His legacy, I hope, will be that we try and settle science in agreed positions rather than in an adversarial approach by getting people in the same room like he did on Saturday. Matt was an exemplar of getting people to understand and change by sharing knowledge. While he was an outstanding witness, he much preferred progressing things outside of the courts at least cost and by building consensus. If we really mean to honour him, I think it's really nice that you've taken this opportunity today, Chairman, can we please consider how we go forward with our planning work in the water space, and to his legacy is the memory of how he would have liked us to done some of these things a lot better.
Thank you, Kate. Were there any other speakers or anyone else want to comment? Gary?
Thank you. Yes, certainly echo those words. And for me, Matt was a very good friend. He was a trusted advisor. His passion for Otago and his knowledge of Otago, and I think his time on staff, and then his time as a consultant and engagement with the community, and having worked for catchment groups and what he did for them, he was incredibly well regarded. And I think in the processes, in the very legal and formal processes, he was seen by all as someone who speaks sense and cuts to the chase and knows his stuff, and can put, what is often very challenging science in a way that people will understand it. And certainly his loss has rocked a lot of the community across Otago. He'll be sadly missed.
Thanks, Gary. Any further speakers? If not, thank you for those comments. Moving on, so there are no apologies, but we have Brian, Michael, Laws, Kevin, Alexa, all on Zoom. Also, Nick, CFO, is also on Zoom. I don't believe there's anyone else at the stage. Right. So moving on to, we have no public forum. Confirmation of the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes required because of urgency or any other reason. Moving on to conflicts of interest. Just once again, this is a reminder of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between their role or your role as an elected representative and any private or other external interests that you might have. So anyone want to raise anything now, or just deal with it as we look through the agenda? That's fine as well. Okay, moving on to item 5, which is the confirmation of minutes, and that council will consider the minutes of previous council meetings as a true and correct record with or without changes. So we should really deal with these independently. I'll move from the chair that the minutes of the 11th of May 2022 extraordinary council meeting is a true and accurate record. Second by Carmen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. I'll move from the chair that the minutes of the 18th of May 2022 extraordinary council meeting is a true and correct record. Second by Kate. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Also move the 25th of May 2022 council meeting is a true and correct record. Seconded by Hillary. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Move the minutes of the 26th of May 2022 emergency council meeting. Seconded by Michael Becker. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And finally, I'll move that the minutes of the 1st of June 2022 emergency council meeting are a true and accurate record. Seconded by Carmen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, open actions from resolutions of council. As at 29th of June, these actions from resolutions of council will be reviewed. Is there any items that need to be discussed? If not,
Sorry.
either action is being taken, or if there's an outline of where they're at during the follow-up process or whatever. Kate.
Sorry, the third item, which is the Zero Carbon 2030 Alliance, which was meeting date June last year, and there hasn't, I think, been, there's something in November, was there?
There was an agreement signed.
I know there was an agreement signed,
Yeah.
but presumably that's not that many years away. I'm just wondering what progress we are making. It doesn't give me huge confidence if there's nothing much happening
Thanks,
after
Amanda.
6 months.
Yes, I understand there's quite a lot of activity happening at the moment at official level, and that will be coming back to council in the next couple of months.
Okay.
To report back on. So it is underway.
It is.
Running.
There is more happening than it looks like in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Kate. Any other items? If not, moving on to item 7, matters for council consideration. So first up, we've got the annual plan 22-23 adoption. Welcome to Mike Rosler. We've obviously got Nick on Zoom. So this paper is provided for adoption of the Otago Regional Council's annual plan 22-23 and to enable the subsequent approval of rates and charges for the 1st July 2022 to 30 June 2023. Last step in the process, Mike. Probably a bit like running a marathon, and you just sort of see the tape there, the finishing tape. Is that the feeling?
Yes. So needless to say, I don't have a lot to say in response other than, yeah, you're right, the mahi's been done and we're at the procedural end of it, which is good.
Excellent. So 3 recommendations there that we received the report. We note recommendations from 1 June 2022 Finance Committee meeting. where most of the work was done, which has been communicated to Council Management for Action and Inclusion for 21-22 and 22-23 REC programs, and adopts the Otago Regional Council Annual Plan 22-23 as circulated with this report.
I'll
Firstly,
move that motion. Those motions.
those three. Thank you, Hilary. Have I a seconder? Seconded by Kevin. I'll just double check. Are there any questions before we go into debate? No questions? Cool. Hilary, did you want to make any comment in terms of debate?
No, I think it's good, great. I mean, we've done, as Mike says, the mahi, and we need to just finish off the process.
Thank you. Kevin?
No, look, I just congratulate the staff really on presenting a report, an annual plan that's reflective of what we're trying to do. The fashion that they've gone about doing has been exceptional. It's a good document. It's really showing us that we have set a direction at the start of this triennium to push environmental change and make the ORC resourced well and fit for purpose and on a forward direction. This reflects it. It reflects what we outlined in our long-term plan. We're bang on budget to that long-term plan, albeit staff have obviously found savings in that to ensure the work programs will still go on, but we're working under the duress of inflation. So that they've got to be commended to that. I just remind everyone that we are spending other people's money and we actually need to respect that. So we need to ensure that we are spending it wisely and getting the best efficiency for that money and the best value for that money. I'm sure staff understand that. I'm sure as governors, we will monitor that as we go through, but it's an exciting annual plan, which will have many challenges. And I'm sure as a staff and as a governance team together, we'll make sure that works for the best of Otago and the best of our environment. So congratulations to Nick, Mike and your team. I could rattle down the names of that team, but I'll get one wrong. So the whole team, make sure, Nick, if you could pass it on to your whole team and the whole staff to the work to make sure we get in the next 12 months, we'll work to keep within that budget, which we know we have to. So well done, and let's get this exciting work program underway and keep it going for our environment, for our public. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And wearing your finance hat, very appropriate comments you've made. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Part of the mahi has been done, and I do acknowledge the work of the finance team and all of those that contributed outside of that. This council will be judged on whether that money that we have extended is spent well, and that will only be valued by the community if A, they can see it, and B, it adds value. I think the mahi is only just beginning. There is a heck of a lot of work that has to be done, but we have to show the community and work with the community to show that we are investing well and that it has value. That, I think, is something that is at the core of where I think this council needs to go, because I don't think that is a level that we have done particularly well in the past. And the big challenge for me is to see us actually start the mahi properly. So while I agree absolutely with that this is the plan we need to start, I just am wanting to make sure that people don't think the job is yet done.
Thanks, Kate. I'll go to Michael Laws.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find that I will not be supporting this motion and cannot support the adoption of the Otago Regional Council Annual Plan for 22-23. And what I am concerned about is what I expressed at the Finance Committee meeting, the complete failure of intellect and insight by this organisation, but also, it has to be said, the complete failure of empathy and understanding of the community that we profess to serve. To be imposing an 18% rates rise at a time of imminent recession is just an act, I think, of madness, but is also an act of wanton disregard for understanding the community that we are meant to be serving. We had options. We are about to staff or increase the number of ORC staff by 30 to 35 extra in the next 12 months, when there are still a number of unfilled vacancies. We are overstaffed in certain areas that I identified at the last Finance Committee meeting. And we've had extraordinarily poor consultation with the community over this issue. We think consultations, talking to stakeholders, most of whom don't pay rates. We forget that we've got ratepayers and residents who will be bearing the burden of our largesse. Yet again, local government has demonstrated that it has a brilliant understanding of cost-plus mentality. There's been no evaluation of the effectiveness of last year's 48% rates rise. So what we've decided to do is plough on regardless, despite the fact the world's changed and the economy's turned and our communities are suffering. And we've decided that we're just going to give you an 18% like nothing has happened. It's astonishing that this organisation thinks like that, but it's something that I will not accept as being sincere or reliable or in any way useful to our community. We had options, we refused to take them. For that reason, I will not be voting for this annual plan.
Thanks, Michael. Further speakers? If not, I'll just, yep, okay, sorry, Gary.
Yeah, look, I'm the same. I've struggled through this process. I don't want to take from the staff because I think the staff have done an exceptional job, but I think we as governors and staff together needed to take a far more detailed and scrutinising look at what should we be doing on the follow-up year to our 49% increase. And I don't believe we have fully understood the implications of that and what we've achieved, what we've gained for our community, what we move forward with. And when we requested, could we go from 18 to 9? I mean, 9 is still a substantial increase, fair enough. We have to live with an increased inflation, and how that actually directly impacted us is not quite so clear. These are very different times to when we set 49.18 and the follow-on number. And people are really hurting out there, whether it's individuals, whether it's businesses, across all of what happens in Otago. And we need to be absolutely certain that we are spending public monies well. I think our staff are doing an exceptional job, but when we were to have a very close look at how could we do what we do better and more cost effectively, it came back that we just had to have the same number that we'd identified from the start. So look, I'm the same, sorry, I can't support the annual plan as it's proposed.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan and Councillor Laws. I'd like to support it. I think the staff are doing a great job. But mine is looking, my conscience is looking at the outside what's happening. I'm looking at nearly $2 rising for sharing costs. Shortly it'll be no point sharing because it's just a cost down the drain where you're not actually getting any returns. People are really hurting. Now it might be a cup of coffee for whoever lives in the town, but more like a water tank or something if you lived in the country and you've got so many thousand acres. You've just been hammered by NES, you've been hammered by a lot of regulations. And I can see this morning from our regulatory side how well our team is doing. I don't condone any of that. It's just what is happening out there. We're about to go for the world's biggest food shortage, and we're still wanting to do this. I'm with Councillor Callaghan and with Councillor Laws. I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Carly. Any further speakers?
I'd like to write a reply.
Okay. Sorry, Alexa, then Brian.
I'd just like to say that I do support this. I see that the world is changing and the economic situation is very different from it was a year ago. However, what isn't changing, except for the worse, is our environmental scenarios. And that is our job, to stay focused firmly on those things. And the cuts to have taken this annual plan down would have cut directly to the heart of some of the environmental projects that we want to undertake, which I suspect our economic future, are very heavily based in. So without a healthy environment, we do not have a healthy economic future. So for that reason, I'm going to continue on with this and not have any thinking about short-term economic issues and trying to put them ahead of the long-term environmental gains that we need to make. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexa. Brian.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm also going to support the motion. Look, we put the mahi in from a governance perspective, staff perspective, in establishing and forming a long-term plan. Look, there was a general recognition that our environment was in debit. There's some serious tensions. That's been recognised by our community in terms of any feedback that we've had. That's been recognised by central government. In fact, central government have actually imposed upon us a significant number of responsibilities that we need to implement that do need to be funded. Yes, there are challenges in the world, but there's also significant challenges in our environment that are not going to go away. As the previous speaker said, we need to stay focused. We need to get on with it. Thank you. Very happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Richard.
Also supporting and just wanted to say that we have had public submissions through this process. We had a range of views, but we did have actually a lot supporting the work and the projected rates regime. So that's all been done. We also had some really detailed analysis of where we could save money through this process. So to insinuate that that didn't occur is not correct. We did do that. We put a lot of time into that. Agree that as governors, we have done that. This is our job. We've heard the community. We've gone away. It is our job to take on board whether or not we need to be spending this much money. We've really looked at that. The role of regional councils has really increased in terms of relevance, I suppose, to where we're at as society and what society needs us to be doing. And we have to invest in a number of different areas, right from transport through to clearing up air quality, to millions of different things that we're doing out there for our environment. We've heard that we need to be communicating as well what we're doing a lot better, and I agree with that. I think that's absolutely fundamental, that our communities can go along understanding where their investment is being spent really clearly, part of that, and understanding that it's been done well. And we have heard from Councillor Laws that he doesn't support a rates increase. That's absolutely fine. That's his right to do that. He's also said that he feels that he could achieve that by managing to not increase some staff numbers or reduce some staff numbers in a particular area. I understand that's in communication. We can't have it both ways. I feel we do need to invest in that. We've also looked at that in detail and found that that would not decrease the rates rise by the levels that Council Laws suggested. So I feel that we've gone through a process, a really rigorous one. We've got to where we are. We need to spend this much money to do a good job for our community, and I strongly believe that, so I will be supporting it. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Just a couple of comments from me. The major theme that has come through as an elected member of the Otago Regional Council over this triennium has been ensuring that the organisation is fit for purpose, whether that was in a policy or plan space, or essentially delivering on our regulatory requirements or mandatory requirements that are set by central government. And I see that these steps, the significant increase last year, significant increase this year, are steps towards to ensure that we're not only fit for purpose now, but also going forward. So I think it's really important that we stay on track in that regard. In terms of some of the projects that we are committed to, and Alexa touched on this, so I think it's really important to realise environmental projects are quite different to projects that a TA is confronted with. For example, operating hours of a library, where you can adjust those on a yearly basis if you really want to. That'd probably annoy your community a little bit, but if you look at environmental projects, they're often mid to longer term. And we've embarked on a number of significant projects, water quality improvements, for example, throughout the region. And we're just starting to build a platform to launch really good implementation programs or work streams. We will actually get some runs on the board, as Kevin alluded to as well. And those runs on the board will eventually come. At the moment, we're still building towards those outcomes, but I support these motions because I think this is a more of a longer term approach. And in terms of rate increases, yes, it's not easy to absorb those in a household income, but if you look at the actual numbers, they're not significant in terms of dollars. If you're not confronted with a targeted rate such as a flood and drainage scheme. Any further speakers? Michael Decker.
Yeah, I just wanted to say firstly thanks to Mike and Nick for the work that they have led, both their team and us, through in the last several months in developing what I think is an excellent annual plan. You've done a terrific job. Mike, your coming here from DCC was the best thing that you've done for a long time.
The DCC's done.
I have acknowledged as a councillor of several terms in the past that this organisation got it wrong for a long time. And I was part of it, so I don't feel good about it, acknowledging that. But we seem to believe that the smell of an oily rag was enough to run a V8 on. And now we've acknowledged that we have to fill the tank a bit more. That's painful. I accept what Gary and Carmen said about things being tough in the rural community. But nevertheless, Alexa and Gretchen and co were absolutely right that we are about big picture environmental issues which cannot, in the year 2022, be starved of resource and be starved of committed people. To suggest that we could cut our staffing or our funding at a time like this is just ludicrous. So I'm very happy to support this motion and to adopt a plan which I think is exactly what we wanted. It's been long heralded ever since we started discussing our LTP. People have known that this moment of truth was going to arrive, and it comes with a bit of a cost. I regret that, of course, but that's just the way things are. We've got to put priority on the reason why we sit at this table, which is our commitment to making Otago's environment healthier, stronger, more robust. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll be voting aye.
Thank you. Hillary, you're right on the clock.
I'm not, I consider our annual plan a work in progress type of approach to our finances. I think our staff have done a good job of getting us to where we've got to. Most importantly for me about the cost of what we're doing is that the cost on our ratepayers is value for money. And I think it still eludes us connecting with ratepayers and explaining to them why an increased cost is value for money. I think just saying it has environmental benefits, we need to be able to say things that will, and this is not our finance team's problem, they've done a very good job of laying out what they can about this, but if I then said, well, if the environment has to improve as a response, you know, I'm going to take $2 million off you, I'm going to improve the environment, I'd like to know exactly what it is, because it's no use just saying, well, the environment's too important to staff for money. And it's no use just saying it's increased a level of service, because despite the fact that I've been in councils now for 5 years, I still don't understand why we call something a level of service when all you mean is we spend money on that thing. That doesn't make it a service. You know, parking meters in Dunedin are a level of service. It's not service to the community. So I think we need to be able to explain better to people out there why that money is being spent and why it is value for money. In some cases, it's because the government has required us to do more, and we should just be upfront about that. And in other cases, we need to be able to justify why spending this money increases an outcome that people want. And I don't think we're yet doing that well. The other thing that's important to me in this plan is that we have signalled that we do not want any cost overruns. For the last 5 years, we have overspent our budget, and we do this in two ways. We have some spending which we sort of accept as being outside the budget, which I don't think we need to. And we have some spending which we know, and increasingly we know because we're told at meetings, that is unbudgeted expenditure that we nevertheless agree to. And we have been spending, in some cases, it's appeals and things, and we heard this morning why there's sometimes we just have to be a party to something and we haven't even made a choice about it, it just happens. But we have indicated in this budget that because we know several $1 million is being spent, overspent every year anyway, we better be underspending on things because we know that overspend's going to happen, and it better be zero sum game at the end of the year. So I think that's important, that we've told people that that better be a balanced budget. That's where we're heading. And because of that, it's going to be more challenging this year. And that's part of the reason why I didn't fight quite as hard for saying that we should reduce the increase, because I thought that that had a chance of creating a dishonesty about it, because we would reduce the increase and then we would overspend it to spend the amount of money that we were going to spend anyway. So to me, let's balance this budget and let's try as hard as we can to make people understand why it's value for money, starting with us, so as we can explain it to other people. So that's why I am going to support this, not because it's perfect, but because it has several major steps in the right direction for me.
Thanks, Hilary. I think we'll just take these separately, just in case. Just in case. Okay, so I'll put the first, so moved by Hilary, seconded by Kevin. The first motion is to receive the report. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. The second one is notes the recommendations from 1 June 2022 Finance Committee meeting have been communicated to Council Management for action and inclusion for the 21-22 and the 22-23 work programs. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. Carried. Do you want that recorded?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Joy. The third motion adopts the Otago Regional Council Annual Plan 22-23 as circulated with this report. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Division, please, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, division call for, this is recommendation 3.
Councillor Calvert.
Aye.
Councillor Deaker.
Aye.
Councillor Forbes.
Aye.
Councillor Hope.
No.
Councillor Callagher.
No.
Councillor Laws.
No.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yes.
Councillor Robertson.
Aye.
Councillor Scott.
Aye.
Councillor Wilson.
Aye.
Councillor Noon.
Aye. Motion carried 8-3. That concludes that item. Thank you very much.
I
Oh,
had
you did have
foreshadowed
someone.
a supplementary.
Sorry.
And I've circulated it recently. I did talk to some, I circulated to the staff last night. So we just, in second motion, we noted recommendations. One of the things we talked about on the 1st of June was a change from territorial authority to a catchment area rate for river management, which makes sense if you think about it. At the moment, we do a territorial, the whole Dunedin city goes into a pot for the exception being Wanaka and Queenstown have their own rating areas for that. We talked about it and the staff said that they would be doing some work alongside it. Because this may be the last chance this council has to address the matter, I did think it was some merit in formalising it as a motion. And so I have pre-circulated that. It basically says, grabbing my phone to find it. Is it able to go up, Diane?
Yes, yeah.
I've just given it to Diane.
Sorry.
So
That's all right, I thought
if
I'd
you
send it to you.
read it out in
Oh.
the meantime.
Hang on. When did you send it, sorry?
Did you send it to Di yesterday?
No, I didn't. I sent it to
Last night.
no, recently. The motion is that staff report back to council on alternative catchment-based rating systems for river management bracket and potentially other catchment-funded work streams in a bracket in time for consideration of the 23-24 annual plan. Sorry, I will send that to you again now. I have just received something that went into a box and I maybe didn't get to you.
Oh, yeah, sorry, no, I didn't have that.
The magic doesn't
Imagine
always
my
happen.
emails.
The magic doesn't always happen. I'm sorry. Apologies, Di.
Just on just what Di
Yeah, I may, yeah.
put it up. Did you want to elaborate any more?
So it is at the moment, as we get into integrated catchment management, and I appreciate there's a workshop on that tomorrow, where we're working more and more on EPMUs. It occurs to me that different communities will have different work streams that they may want to see funded by rates or river management work in tighter, smaller areas than in territorial authorities. And then they can see the action that's coming out of that contribution through their rates. So we raised this at several meetings and the staff said that they would be doing some work on that. I'm just formalising it with this motion. So that it ensures it, because some of us may not be around the table, I may well not be. And it just makes sure that work stream happens for the next council. It's just a timing issue. If it was another year, I wouldn't probably move it because there is an election in the way. I'm wanting to formalise it.
I'm happy to second it. Any further discussion? So essentially it gives a bit more body to what we passed back in the Finance Committee meeting earlier on in June. And so it's just a bit more clarity around.
It's not saying, and it's not saying we'll definitely go down that line. It is just a paper of what the ramifications would be to do a catchment instead of a territorial authority boundaries. I mean, the staff were very, very aware of what we were talking about. Yeah.
Any discussion? Brian?
Yeah, can you hear me there, Andrew?
Yes.
Cool. So it's just a question. Look, I'm just conscious of the fact that 5 seconds ago we all agreed that we didn't want to overspend the financial plan for the next period. So my question is, has this work actually already been included, by staff? What do the financial, I assume it's principally financial, or maybe there's an engineering perspective to it as well. I'd like to hear from staff. Well, one, has it been included? Two, does it align with their thinking?
Yeah, so it relates to 23, 24.
No, it was in time for 23, 24, wasn't it?
Yeah, in time for.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry.
So it's actually to do with this next financial year to do some work on alternative catchment-based rating systems in time for the 23-24 annual plan. So it's over the next 12 months. We've just agreed not to overspend. 2 questions. Has it been included? 2, is it a good idea? Does it align with where we're going? Integrated
Okay,
system.
Brian, I just want to ask Kate a question. So the actual work that relates to the 22-23 year will be a staff report coming back.
23-24 year.
It's right. The,
No.
the work
So-
that happened in the 22-23 year was, as I understood it, staff understood. When I asked the question, I think it was in June, earlier June meeting, was that staff said that yes, they understood the question and they were going to do some work on it. I am just formalising that process.
Just trying to clarify for Brian.
And I'm formalising it through my question.
Okay, I'll go to staff then. Probably yours, is it, Gavin?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's probably a Mr. Donnelly question in the first instance.
Thank you. Nick?
Yeah. So I sort of see this as part of the. If you remember back when we did we had a paper following the LTP that came to council in December last year around. It was Tyree flood and drainage rates and how we funded for water quality improvements. So we decided then not to pursue any change for this annual plan. And what we did was we said that we will be looking at those rating issues over this next period, which will effectively be this next financial year, with a view to identifying what the issues are and what we may or may not do, with a view to taking that through into any changes into the next LTP. I would see that, this piece of work here, initially at a very high level, so without, spending too much time or money on it, would fall into that, because although the resolution back in December focused on those two rating areas, we have discussed previously in our various workshops that there is other rating issues that we need to look at, like, for example, around public transport rating. So we were envisaging over this next 12-month period doing, work on reviewing rates anyway. This would and could fall into that. And we'd report back. The only bit that's a little bit tricky is it says, report back in time for the annual plan next year. That sort of consolidates it up, because we'll be kicking off the annual plan for next year, quite within the next sort of 2 or 3 months. So, to put something in together and then start kicking off a change for this, if it was then council's desire that it did change, is probably a bigger piece of work. But rolling it into an overall review of our rates and then identifying which rates we want to focus on and potentially make any changes to, with a view to that being consulted on and happening in the LTP, that's certainly doable.
So the answers to both my questions. The first question, has it already financially been sort of allowed for, type of thing, or is it an additional cost? The answer is that it has been allowed for to some degree.
Yeah, it is. We've factored in that we'll be, over this next 12-month period, the finance team will be looking at these rating issue. Well, not necessarily this one, but rating issues, and some were previously identified in particular, but rating and potential rating reviews in general.
Cool. And my second question that aligns with your thinking, I think the answer to that was yes as well. Yeah.
Well, this
here, review.
This, as this got mentioned, it's been mentioned previously. Currently, river management and various other things we do on a TA boundary basis. So we'll have to do a bit of work of what it would look like around if you change boundaries and did those various things. And until we've done that, I'm not saying that this is the way that you would necessarily rate it or not, but we need to do a little bit of work to understand what this scenario means, and then council can form a view on whether that's something that they want us to pursue looking at, in more detail.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other queries for clarification, and then we'll go to the motion? Any other questions? No? Okay, so the motion is we request staff report back to council on alternative catchment-based rating systems for management and potentially other catchment funded work streams in time for consideration in the 23-24 annual plan. Kate, did you want to, is there any discussion, debate? If not, Kate, do you want to write a reply?
No, I'm very comfortable with it.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Mike. Moving on to the rates report and rates resolution, item 7.2. This report provides detail of each of the rates to be set and to recommend that council adopt the rate resolution for the 22-23 financial year. Attachments are there, the rating resolution for adoption June 2022, the rating report 22-23, the sample rates, and the main capital value samples for 22-23. I think we may have Sarah Harrison online, Manager of Finance. Welcome, Sarah.
Good afternoon.
Is there anything you wanted to comment on with regards to your report?
Nothing specifically, no, just standard format like prior years, just reflecting the 18% increase.
Thank you. So the two recommendations, we receive this report and the attached rating and sample reports and adopt the rating resolution for 22-23 financial year. Before I ask for a moment, a second, are there any questions at all? Michael Laws.
Yes, thank you. Can I take you to my page 96, then, which is looking at table called Equalised Capital Values of the Otago region, and it's linked to paragraph 12 of this report. It compares the values for 2021-22 with 22-23. And I'm assuming that that table has quite a dramatic impact upon later on the levying of general rates. Is that correct?
It doesn't impact general rates, but in terms of it's to balance them out.
Right. But this says here that despite the economy of Queenstown going into particularly the hospitality and tourism industry into some sort of almost catastrophe, that there's a 4.6% increase in their capital values that we're going to be rating for, at the same time that Dunedin is going to be having a 2.3% drop in rating value. Is that correct?
Based on the equalisation. Oh, sorry, John.
That's correct, is it?
Well, it's not. It's not having a 2.3% drop in their rates per se. This is the allocation of the total rate. Yeah. But it relates to the general rates, doesn't it? The equalised capital values will directly feed through into the uniform annual general charge because you base it on capital values. Is that correct? Yeah, we do. But this is how you divvy up the rate requirement pie. Well, that's how we do it, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do because, in actual fact, Queenstown in the last 12 months, well, we're going to increase their percentage by 4.6% of the total pie at the same time that we're dropping Dunedin's by 2.3. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah, that is correct because their capital values have gone up more than other places. Okay, and that's then reflected in page 102 under general rates, where Dunedin, despite its significant population increase, will be spending 7.7 million. Well, that's the amount of rates that we're seeking from them, as distinct from about 7.2 for Queenstown Lakes. So I'm just doing a quick calculation here, Nick, and I'm thinking of the uniform annual general charge, about 50% of it is coming from the Dunstan ward solely. Yeah? So that's the Central Otago,
plus Queenstown Lakes is going to make up around about 50% of all the general rates that we're going to charge. Correct?
No,
Well,
you're adding
relying on your
you're
figures.
adding together Queenstown and Central.
That's exactly what I said to you,
Yep.
Dunstan Ward, yeah.
Yep, that's about right.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. I'm just clarifying that those are the issues, because we're simply deciding to levy the uniform annual general charge upon the capital value of properties, right? And
that's correct.
This
it's not the uniform.
Yeah.
You keep saying uniform annual general charge. The uniform is a fixed amount. Yeah. So every property pays the same uniform annual general charge. Yeah.
Right.
But the remainder of it is charged, with the variable rate across your capital value.
And that's called general rates.
That's your general rate. And then and of your total general rate, there's a percentage that is apportioned on a fixed charge.
Thank you for clarifying.
Any further questions? If not, would someone like to move 1 and 2?
Could you take separately, please, Mr. Chairman? Because
yes, no problem. Hillary, happy to move that we receive this report and the attached rating sample reports, seconded by Carmen.
Yes.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Hillary, you happy to move number 2, adopts the rating resolution?
Yes.
Seconded by Carmen.
No.
Oh, okay. Seconded by Gretchen. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
3 of us.
Can I have my
noes recorded?
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Okay. Done. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, Nick. Moving on to the Eco Fund approval. This report is provided for council will approve the recommended Eco Fund applications and applications for additional incentive funding for the April 2022 round. There's a number of attachments there. We welcome Richard Evans, Libby Caldwell, we welcome Gavin, Manager Operations. Libby, you are now Acting Manager Environmental Implementation, is that correct?
Correct.
Well done, good work. So we're essentially in your hands. I'll go to Councillor Deaker in a moment, but initially in terms of introducing the report, was there any comments you wanted to make?
No, we're happy to take the report as read. Thank you.
Excellent. You're all good, Libby? Yep. Good as gold. Michael, was some overarching comments you wanted to make about the process?
Yeah, I'm keen to do that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. This is the 8th round of the Eco Fund since it was brought into being in 2018. And I think it's worth noting when we consider this paper that a very timely review, comprehensive review, was done at the start of this year and adopted by this council, I think in February of this year. And that review was largely done by Anna Ferguson, who's not here today, which is a shame because I would like to have thanked her again for the work she did in producing better systems, better criteria, and generally a more strategic approach to the Eco Fund than we had in the past. I'm not saying it lacked those things in the past, but the review of this year certainly brought about better procedures, better clarity, and certainly a more well-defined set of criteria against which assessments of proposals could be made. And as one who's been involved right from the start, I really appreciated that, and I think all of us did. So, Mr. Chairman, we had, as the report has told us, over 50 proposals put to us this year for assistance from the Eco Fund. And we saw the addition this year of specific funding amounts for planting projects following the removal of wildlings, and for plantings of natives for better water quality, and for sustained rabbit management on a community by community basis. And I thought they fitted well to the Eco Fund, and it was a good move. And I think, Gavin, your team did well to bring those elements of our efforts together. And it was reflected in the fact that we had over 50 applications, the highest ever that I've noted. The process was sound. I mentioned already the fact that we had better defined criteria. And I think we had a really robust approach this year as well. 5 expert staff assessed every application and reached a consensus on their evaluations of each proposal. And that was followed by 3 councillors plus Kaumatua Edward Ellison from Mana Whenua, assisting the councillor group. And that too speedily reached consensus. In the past, it's taken us up to a full day of discussion and debate, and sometimes just plain old argument to get to an agreed position. This year, for the reasons I've already covered, it was much more readily done, and that was great. So every proposal was put into rank order by this process through the 2 panels. And at this time, I'd like to thank and congratulate Richard Ewens for his work in leading the whole process from start to finish in an organisational sense, an informational sense, and his general leadership. Richard, you did a sound job, a really sound job. And we've had it in the past, but probably this year a new benchmark was achieved in terms of the management of how this was done. So having said all that, Mr. Chairman, you can see that I'm confident in moving the 3 recommendations on page 126. One, that we received the report, which is an exhaustive report, I must say, covers absolutely everything as far as I can tell. That we approve the recommendations from the panel, and we note that a further annual review will be completed by December of this year, in time for the next round in March of 2023. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you, Kate. Kate and Alexa, was anything you wanted to add as panel members?
I'd agree that it was a great process. Look, I find having to sit through and read these is a delight to see how busy and how far-ranging throughout Otago people are passionate about their space and making it better. The one thing, and I know that we differ on this, is understanding that great community groups are going in and doing work on dock land who, in the past life, I've been around these panels where actually dock are part of that panel, and maybe we need to get better interface with them to understand why they are not doing some of the work. You know, there's an application in there. It's absolutely brilliant to see that there's long-tailed bats in the spot in Otago, but community groups having to fundraise through the ORC to get that work done is a surprise. So that's part of the review. I'm sure those were noted. Otherwise, it's been a great process. Thanks to the staff, and thank you to all of those community groups out there making our place even better than it was yesterday.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Alexa?
Yeah, a good process. It was very clean in that there was the matrices were so well designed that we really just once everything had been assessed and given points, we were able just to put a line through as to where the funding started and stopped. And that, of course, because it was so oversubscribed, makes it a little bit difficult. Good projects didn't get funded, as we've heard from one of them, Andrew. I don't know when you want to bring that up, but
we'll deal with the motions and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, but but a really, really, really good process. And again, being so oversubscribed, I wonder into the future how we're going to find more money for this, or particularly where it's work that's well within our remit being done by community groups.
Thanks, Alexa. Very good. Any further comments? Sorry. I was thinking, should we actually put the motions and then speak to the actual motions? Maybe a better way to do it. And I'll come back to you. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. So it'll be moved by Michael Deaker, seconded by Kate. So, okay, we've got them on the table and you're speaking to the motions.
I am speaking to the motions. I would like to also thank you, Rich, for how this report's set out. It's absolutely fantastic. We can see who's been awarded. Sadly, those that weren't quite going to make it. I'm really delighted to see the Yellow Penguins there. We encourage them so much, and good to see their application in there, and good to see they've got a good chunk of money. May I also take this opportunity to thank you, Councillor Deaker, because I know you're not standing for re-election. This has been your baby from day one, and you've loved it, and we've all loved being on your panel. In fact, I think we're all a bit miffed when we don't get chosen or nobody decides to have a sick day. They're exciting, and what I do want to ask is, what did you as the panel find the most exciting? Was it the diversity, the fact there's some new categories? What was it? What stood out for you this time?
I guess it was my first crack at the Eco Fund, administering the fund. But yeah, certainly the diversity is pretty phenomenal. When that's what happens when you get, a good amount of money to fund people with. Yeah, I'd love to see some more from Central proper, like the middle of Otago. There's a bit of a gap there on the map, and be nice to see some more there. But no, really the diversity of not just the groups, but how they're made up. Some are really tiny, they're weekend warriors. Some are really well funded. They've got $6 million, from Jobs for Nature. So there's a huge range of groups and abilities, and so yeah, it's quite challenging assessing them all in that sense, but it's exciting to see what they're doing.
Thank you. And thank you once again for the report.
Any other speakers?
Just one thing I should have suggested is that a formal letter over your signature go to Edward Allison thanking him for the amount of time he put into this project. Where that man finds time to breathe, I'll never know. He is such a hard worker, and he's a great friend to this council, as well as being obviously a contributor to our committee and mana to mana work and so on. But I think a special note of recognition for his thorough, painstaking work that he put into this. I really appreciated that, and I'm sure we all do.
Thanks very much for that, Michael. From my perspective, sorry, Gary.
I just want to say really briefly too how great a process it is, what we're achieving, how it's growing year by year. I think we've sort of created this little model that is actually now really getting some good legs across Otago and getting really good applications. And I suppose, Andrew, with from your position and whoever the chair is into the future, that any opportunity to raise this model with central government, and just imagine if, say, a model could be found where central government matched the funding, and it could mean that we could actually do twice as much.
Yeah.
So opportunities like that, if they can be taken with appropriate ministers, might be worthwhile just to highlight what we are achieving. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. My comment would be around, in terms of bang for our bucks, 440 odd. 470 in total. 440 odd that's been spent, and I think that were made available for these groups. And there's 230 odd thousand ratepayers throughout Otago. It's $2 per ratepayer. And in terms of bang for your bucks, the community are turning that into a huge investment into the environment across the board, doing the work that closely aligns with this organisation. So I think it's a really, really worthy cause and a great process. Michael, just back to you for any final comment for your reply. Comfortable? Okay, I'll put those three motions all together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now I'll go back to Alexa. You have an email from Gareth Noble, and just remind us the organisation that he's representing. Alexa, you'd just like to read that email, I believe.
I'm about to do that. He was an applicant to our co-fund, and his organisation is Wentworth Estate, I think. Sorry, I'm just pulling it up here, working on one screen today, so it's a bit trickier. I'm going to get through without a coughing fit because it's a bit like that at the moment. Okay. Apologies, I had it here immediately before. Okay, so he is representing Wentworth Estate Residents Group in Gibbston, Queenstown Lakes. And he sent this through. He was going to present at public forum, but we came to the conclusion, or you did, Andrew, and with others, to do it this way. I'm just going to read it out. It's heartening to see a high number of applications for eco-funding and the additional funding made available by OIC. I believe this recognises the community's commitment to our special environment. The funding also supports well-being and community collaboration and cohesion. Even the opportunity to seek funding has developed a more collaborative approach amongst Wentworth Estate residents. It is therefore a shame that a number of excellent community projects cannot be delivered because applications significantly exceeded allocated budget. The Wentworth Estate Residents Group applied for funding to support rabbit control in Gibbston, a rabbit management area. Rabbits are having a significant impact on our environment, which supports native geckos, skinks, and New Zealand falcon, as well as at-risk native flora. Managing rabbits in Gibbston requires a coordinated approach, but efforts to manage rabbits is hampered by a number of constraints. Wentworth Estate, south of State Highway 6, is a 40-hectare subdivision. At the time the land was subdivided, around 20 years ago, a perimeter fence was installed. Covenants prevent any further fencing being installed unless that fencing is on a designated building platform, and even then it must meet design criteria developed for aesthetic reasons rather than rabbit control. Along just over 1 kilometre, the perimeter fence is on State Highway Reserve, which Wentworth Estate residents have no formal responsibility. Another 1 kilometre borders Gibbston Valley Station, a 200-hectare property with other significant stations beyond. Wentworth Estate residents have only recently started to coordinate rabbit control methods. Since our Eco-Fund application was lodged, we've engaged Bevan Todd of Trapping Concepts to provide rabbit management. Bevan installs traps and temporary fencing to catch rabbits that are then humanely killed and sold to restaurants for food and bait. The approach provides a reduced cost to landowners and is more sustainable. However, Bevan has undertaken a thermal imaging survey that's identified a significant number of rabbits, thousands, cycling between Wentworth Estate and the surrounding station at night. Without further control, Bevan's management activities are insufficient to manage populations in the long term. Wentworth Estate residents applied for eco-funding to assist with the installation of fencing along that southern boundary, confirmed as a priority by the thermal imaging survey. Joint ownership of the fence across multiple parties makes collective management extremely challenging without financial support from OIC. Wentworth Estate residents also proposed to fund and undertake upgrade work on the balance of the fencing. We're now committed to ongoing control using Trapping Concepts. Wentworth Estate residents appreciate the work that has been undertaken on the Eco-Fund, and we support the focus areas. Officers have recommended a part award of $4,000 to the Wentworth project. We're grateful for this. That funding would be used to support ongoing control supported by the residents' work. However, without the ability to install fencing on the southern boundary, these measures are likely to have limited long-term effect on the rabbit populations in Wentworth. Ultimately, our project was supported. There simply isn't enough allocated budget to cover the full costs of our project. We therefore ask councillors to consider whether there is any additional budget that could be allocated to this project, acknowledging that the additional cost sought of $45,000 is significant. We believe the proposal will be of significantly greater value. Unfortunately, part funding of proposed projects, whilst beneficial, reduces the possible outcomes. We understand the challenges of our request and support the councillor's decisions regarding applications. Many thanks. Ngā mihi kia ora, Gareth Noble. So that's the message, and there's some interesting challenges in there, including to our pest control and biosecurity plans.
Thank you very much, Alexa. I'm just going to go to Gavin. Any thoughts about the content of the letter? Obviously, it's beyond the scope of what we're dealing with the Eco Fund. But any thoughts in terms of dealing with this matter from an operational sense?
Well, I have a few thoughts. I just recently been provided with the email, and I think in fairness to staff, we just need to go away and reflect on the information in the email and respond accordingly.
Thank you. Richard, yep.
Sorry, yeah, totally agree with that. But the key point in the letter is that the group was partially funded, and that whether or not that means that their project is actually doable at all is the question, I suppose, that they've really raised. And that is a key point, I guess. We should have discussed this earlier on with the paper, but that's the flag. Partial funding, is it actually useful? And we need to think about that as we go forward. But I agree that, I didn't think this was the process to bring up somebody who's unhappy with what they were. I didn't really like this process either. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay, I don't want to get into a debate about the merits of dealing with this email that's now, and I've asked Alexa to read it out because obviously there was a keenness to come and speak at the public forum. So this is the outcome of that request. But as I say, I don't want to get into a debate to try and resolve this here and now. Hilary.
I've got a question for Dr. Palmer, if I may, without getting into, because this is new to you and you've just had it put in front of you. It sounds like there's two neighbours. One, that they describe the rabbits as cycling between something in their place, and the other being road reserve or something. Could you refresh our memories on what the obligations of those neighbours are if there's thousands of rabbits on the next door piece of land cycling their way backwards and forwards? Could you just, point of order, this isn't what our agenda is.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I thought, look, I'm comfortable that Gavin he's heard the email, he's got the information. He said he would need to talk to his staff about it. I'm comfortable that we leave it there at this point, and I'm sure Gavin will keep us posted in what is the outcome of those discussions with his staff. So yeah, I think if you could do that for us, Gavin, by way of an email at the appropriate time, let us know what instruction has been given to your staff. Is that okay?
Perhaps if we could just have an answer to my question, and not now, I'm saying in that process, because if we're getting back to answer that email sometime, that will be part of the...
That's fine. Happy with that. Happy with that, Gavin?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Hand up. So Brian, and then Michael Laws, and then Kevin. Is this on the same topic?
It's on an aligned topic. I was just simply going to say, concur with some of the previous comments that the process has been very good, and just point out that we did receive 53 applications, and they've recommended less than half of those to be supported. And also one of the recommendations, the second recommendation, no, the third one was that an annual review of the Eco Fund will be completed at the end of this year in time for the next round in 23 March. And I'm sure that in that review, just to highlight that because it's becoming more popular, and so there's more happy customers and there's more unhappy customers, just to how we address and how we provide feedback and, to the unhappy ones, and maybe whether we can support them for the following year. Just that whole process, I'd like to be part of the review. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Michael Laws.
This all ties to the Eco Fund, just in case everybody's forgotten. And the really interesting thing about that email is that it reminds me, if you look at page 127 of the report and the graph that accompanies paragraph 8, that we are essentially providing public funds through the Eco, well, that's the question I'm asking, Mr. Deaker. Are we providing public funds for private ends? Because we have a rabbit policy that imposes the cost and the responsibility upon the landowner. And throughout the whole of Otago, but particularly central Otago, a number of larger landowners are spending significant amounts of their own money ridding the land of rabbits and doing us environmental good. I'm struggling to see why we're giving incentives for sustained rabbit management, which would seem to be as I said, public subsidy for private ends. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. You know my view. I think we should be much more active ourselves in rabbit management and rabbit control. But I'm struggling to reconcile this idea that we have private responsibilities cast on landowners, but will subsidise you if you turn up at the Eco Fund, and then you can have your private land and residents subsidised by the Otago ratepayer. Can you explain that to me?
Richard, I'm going to go to Richard. Or Libby, sorry. So the 100K that was in the fund for the first time, there's obviously some criteria around that. Did you want to just run that past us if you've got it with you?
I have. It's actually attached to the report. It's Appendix 3 to that. I don't, you know the page number, Gavin? It's called Incentives Funding Rabbit Management Additional Criteria. So the rabbit management, the planting for water quality and the planting after wild and conifer removal are not part of the Eco Fund. They're separate incentive fundings that we've used the Eco Fund process to decide on which applicants are successful. So they're not part of the Eco Fund. The Eco Fund is, that's not for private gain. So the rabbit incentive funding, the description of that is that this fund supports coordinated community-led rabbit management throughout Otago. It aims to provide community groups or groups of neighbours working collaboratively with an opportunity to lead the improvement of rabbit management in their area. So it's only for groups, it's not for individuals to come and say, we want you to fund us for our rabbit fence or for our rabbit management plan. It's for we're supporting groups of people to come together and create a plan together. Does that answer the question?
So in this particular case, the Wentworth estate, using that email as the idea, the Wentworth estate is a private, commercial, largely residential area of people who can, to be perfectly honest with you, afford a fair bit of money to be able to purchase property in that area. Do we actually give money to them?
I think the point, Michael, I mean, the development is owned by a whole lot of individual ratepayers within the development, right? And they've just happened to be calling themselves after the development for no other reason other than they've got a common goal that meets the criteria for the 100K allocated for rabbit control. And I don't know whether you heard Libby, but it's attachment 3, which outlines those priorities.
That's presumably in newly created groups within the first year.
Okay, so you've answered the question, so let's keep moving on. Kevin, you had a question? All good? Okay. Right, now, where did we get to? So we've dealt, so we've pretty much got this under control, and we Gavin?
I never have the agenda. You just tell me.
7.4. No. Before we get to 7.4, you know what you're doing in terms of talking to your staff in terms of the last item that's been discussed?
Yes, I do, Mr.
Alexa?
Chairman. That's already been forwarded to staff and they'll look
Excellent.
into it because there'll be a whole lot of facts and
wonderful
range of issues that have been raised, and we'll report back to you in due course once we've got that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Libby. Thank you to Michael and Kate, Alexa and Edward. And I will follow that up with a letter to Edward, as you've suggested.
Could I just ask when in due course is? Because to me, nothing is anything unless it's got a time frame within it around it.
So due course is?
Well, we just got the email about an hour ago, and in fairness to staff, there's a number of issues that are raised, and I really can't commit to a time frame right now until I got the scope of the issue. So I prefer to not commit to a time frame right now on something that staff have not yet had time to properly consider.
That's fine. It obviously won't be forgotten about. That's all we need to know. Nice point. Thank you very much. Thank you. So moving on to 7.4, which is the bylaw review adoptions, and report to provide the council approval of the hearing panel recommendations to replace the flood protection management bylaw 2012 and the proposed flood protection management bylaw 2022. Welcome to Michelle Mifflin, Manager Engineering, Alison Weaver, Commercial and Regulatory Lead. Welcome back, Gavin. So this has been a public process under the Local Government Act. We've got the recommendations that have come back from the hearings panel. Essentially, at this point, we either accept or reject what's in front of us. As simple as that. Alison, was there anything you wanted to comment on? Then I'll go to Michelle.
Yeah, there's one small thing in the second recommendation. There's just a word missing in the third line after flood protection. It should have works in there.
Flood protection works owned or controlled.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle, is there anything that you would like to comment on?
Thank you, Chair. No, I think we would take the paper as read. It's been a really thorough, enjoyable process, actually, particularly with community feedback in the panel. I'd like to thank Alison and her team for putting a lot of mahi into this and improving the bylaw significantly. Thank you.
So hopefully a sigh of relief from an engineering perspective and make sure those assets are protected for the next decade.
I'd like to move those recommendations.
I'll just go to Kate as chair, and I'll come back to you, Hillary. So Kate chair, Gretchen and Alan Hubert, independent commissioner.
And I'm happy to move. I did want to make a few comments and thank the staff for the process. It was great. I really want to thank the community who, at relatively short notice and in time constraint way, responded to this process. Was a good process, but it wasn't the best process because we did have a time constraint, as was referred to in the earlier report, because we have to get this done by a certain time. And so there are a couple of things that, had we had longer, we may have asked more questions of, but we were constrained by that. The submissions were fantastic, and all of them, I think, made us think, which was great. And many got changes in the process or word changes. So I really, really appreciate people who drop on up and do that. I have sent out at the request of the hearings panel to all of you the submission or the PowerPoint presented by Nicole Foote, because it puts us in an interesting way. Here we are, in one hand, protecting drains, which in any other context would be a waterway that people would be encouraged to beautify and look after, and look after better. And it's actually, I got to look at some of those, which date Gretchen to a previous job where she worked with the community out in the Whero to plant. And it is a difficulty when you see an urban water environment which cannot or is constrained or constrains the community from doing what they think is the best in that area. So I think there's some work to be done on that. And we've got some recommendations in there about the a global consent or a consent on a long-term work program. And I hope that we'll be able to do some work with those groups along that line. But otherwise, it's a great process. And I highly recommend it as something we need to do to protect those, protect the flood and drainage works. But there is some work to be done, possibly in some other reviews that were highlighted, but we've still got some process work to be done on.
Thanks, Kate. Gretchen. make any comment?
Yeah, I felt it was a really good process, a really good, robust process. I was involved in the one 10 years ago as well, so it was interesting to revisit the bylaw and to greatly improve it since then as well. But yeah, we had 25 submissions, which was actually a lot of submissions, particularly because they were well, a lot of them were quite extensive, say University of Otago or consultants acting for rural properties. So as well as that, a great deal of experience from the Taieri Plains, particularly in terms of submitters who've been involved over the years. So I felt that in terms of harnessing community experience and people who are affected by the bylaw, we actually got brilliant input, which really helped us. We got 10 people come along to the hearing as well, which as well as the written evidence was really helpful. We could question in great detail. We did a good process as well of putting things back to staff for comment and then reconsidering that as well. So I think it was really robust. It's different from a consent or a RMA type hearing when you're doing a bylaw, very different. So yeah, a bit more relaxed, and in a way we got really better outcomes, I'd say, from being able to do that approach. But yeah, I'd like to thank Kate for chairing us through that, and Ellen Cubitt, but particularly you, Alison, for coordinating all the work from a staff perspective. I think it was a really, really good outcome. Yeah, hard for people to see the amount of work that's gone on there from staff, but it was huge. So thank you very much to everyone involved. Thanks. Did you move, Kate?
Thanks.
I did move.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Yeah.
So Kate moved, second by Gretchen.
Yeah.
Hillary, did you want to speak on the matter?
I just wanted to move it. I think when you've
I sense that.
when you've
Sorry.
got, and I will say my short piece, when you've organised a dog, don't do your own barking.
Woof.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Hey, so, oh, sorry, Carmen. Sorry.
Can I ask the ladies a question, because I haven't been done hearings before? When you have the hearings, is it just you two? Is there
And Ellen.
And Ellen, yeah, I get that. So, for example, if they ask you a question and it's something that you've got to consider with staff, what happens? Can you just talk? Well, I've never processed one, so
it's all on video. You feel free to watch it.
well, in short, yeah, you go away and talk to staff about something if there's something you don't get, understand, or you want a ruling on.
Yeah, we do all of that.
So. Yeah, sure. And then you come back though. What I'm asking is if someone has a pertinent question that could be a bit tricky, but it's worth exploration, you come back, and then what happens with that person?
Submitter 7, who we don't know who that person is, gave a really good had a flow path that they wanted to have considered as an alternative route for a drain. We couldn't deal with that in that time frame, but there was a clear process given by staff as to what they need to do and who to contact.
Yes.
And that is one of the ones that may come up as something to be an alteration to later. They offered an alternative route. And so we had that conversation. That person didn't come along. Others came along.
Yes.
We had conversations. We sought advice.
Yes.
Mr. Bryant was one of them.
Yes.
We sought advice about some things that the reports that he talked about, and the staff replied back, and we made a decision on the basis of that report that he'd referred us to.
And while it's tricky that some people are anonymous, it makes it awfully hard because you actually do want to be in contact with them.
But no, the staff can do that. They knew that, and we're happy with that process. As long as we knew where we had to find out where the place was to make sense to their submission. But we've done that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it was good. And there was some outstanding issues as a legal opinion, which we haven't seen, which was being sorted about another issue that 2 submitters came along with. So that's a work in progress.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen.
I'll send you the reference so you can watch YouTube.
And you'll have some homework on it.
Thank you. So the recommendations 1 to 10, happy if I just put them all in one motion. So I'll put 1 to 10. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carry, and obviously the word works is included in number 2. And thanks very much, Alison, Michelle, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Hopefully you can now gather breath in this space.
We will.
Thanks very much, Kevin. We're now on to 7.5, National Adaptation Plan Submission. This is paper provided to report on the staff submission lodged to the Ministry for the Environment, consultation draft National Adaptation Plan, better known as NAP. You'll recall we had a workshop on this back in May, I think it was, and then the submission was written by staff, written was going to be written by staff, but the timing of this coming back retrospectively after the submission had to meet a certain time frame, which didn't meet our time frames, etc. So really, this is just a noting report. Oh, Francisco, welcome. So the recommendation in front of us is basically we note the report and the submission to the Ministry for the Environment consultation draft National Adaptation Plan. Thank you for your good work for getting this in on time. Thank you for bringing this report to us. Is there any comment you wanted to make before I put the motion?
No, just take it as read. Thank you to the councillors for your input. It really helped form a lot of the submission points we made in the paper. So it was really valuable, the feedback we got from the councillors at the workshop.
Thanks, Francisco. Excellent. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.
I'll happy to second.
I don't know if I got a second.
Did you get a mover?
I didn't even move it. Okay, I'll move it.
I'll
Kate
second.
seconded. Sorry. Something's a thing. Might have to have an early smoke over things. Anyway,
Yes.
let's move on. 7.6 updated councillor remuneration determination. This is the report is provided for council to note the 22-23 local government members remuneration determination. A few pages there to read. I'm happy to move 1, 2, and 3. I'm a seconder.
No.
Thanks, Carmen. Are there any questions? Pretty straightforward, really. It's out of our control.
Yeah, that's right.
I will put the 3 all at once. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Amanda, for bringing the paper to us. Sorry I didn't give you an opportunity to come up to the table. Moving on to 7.7, this is the dust suppressants and landfill approval part of Plan Change 1, which is as outlined in the paper, and also there's 2 parts of it basically. There's the dust suppressants and the changes around improvement to landfilling. Welcome, Anita.
Sorry, I was going to have staff with me, but I've disappeared.
Delina has probably got other things.
Waiting out there.
Oh, is she?
No, they were there. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
By the time they get here, it might be done.
Cool. So once again, this is a result of a Environment Court process, and we're now back for the sort of official adoption, so to speak, to make those couple of rules or provisions operative. Because Delina's not here, is there anything you want to say, Anita?
No, I think the key thing again is this was a good mediation. Everyone was, came with really constructive, mindset, and we've got a good outcome for those interim rules.
Any questions or questions? Welcome, Delina. No questions? Someone like to move 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Thank you, Carmen. Second by Gretchen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put all 5 together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Moving on to 7.8, proposed amendments to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management and National Environmental Standards to incorporate changes to the wetland provisions, to make technical amendments
Please make a.
No, we've given Warren a pass. We've let him. Warren's not going to join us.
Sammy?
Sammy Khan is online.
Welcome to Sammy Khan, who is a scientist with our team at Otago Regional Council. And if there are any technical questions, we'll go to him or Tom. Welcome, Tom. So is there anything you want to, as the author of this report, is there anything that you wanted to highlight with regards to next steps? Obviously, we're going to note the report, approve the lodgement of the staff submission, and note that a copy of the submission will be reported back in August to council.
Just before Tom starts, can I just say we're getting inundated with central government direction at the moment. So I think there's another 2 coming to S&P in a week's time, and then there's more coming. So there's stuff about every 3rd day. So they don't fall in neatly with the cycles. We try to organise workshops where we can, but this is the way that they're looking at the moment. And Warren does most of this work on his own, and he's not here because he's doing 2 others and trying to get them ready. So there's a heck of a lot of work coming down from central government just in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's continuing.
It's good that we're aware of that and be mindful of that as we, work with staff to, in any way, shape, or form that we can take the pressure off.
Yep.
Whether it's making sure we work in timeframes with workshops, etc., or whatever, be available when possible. Any other questions or queries? Brian, and then Kate.
Yes, there has been a certain amount of publicity about wetlands and wetlands on farms, existing natural wetlands. Does what government propose, will it clarify the situation? That's a pretty naive question, but some type of explanation moving forward.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Personally, I think it goes some way in clarifying some of, especially the wetland definition. So it does remove some ambiguity, but and I noted that as well in the report. There are probably a few other tweaks to the definition that could help achieving that goal. So I think it can be further improved, and the definition itself, it isn't very clear as to how we should deal with wetlands that have been modified over time through development, and also NPSFM as well, despite High Court decisions on that matter, isn't very clear as to how we should deal with wetlands that are in the coastal marine area or wetlands that span, that are freshwater wetlands in part, but also are located in part in the coastal marine area. It's on the government's radar, but I think we should keep on emphasizing the need for guidance in that regard.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Keep at it.
One of the things that has been a feature, and just picking up on, from the paragraphs 15 to 21, is when new government standards have been released, often it becomes a fluid evolving process rather than clear cut right at the front end. That just seems to be the nature of the way some of the unintended consequences are dealt with. Yeah, so once again, that might be something to do with time pressure that others are under. Not for me to judge that. Kate.
We just signed off a submission that was a staff submission and came back to us on the basis that we had a workshop. And I feel really sorry for you guys. I feel even more sorry for the people who've got other day jobs who have to do this in their nighttime jobs to inform the government of why policy may not work. And I've literally been speaking to someone at lunchtime today who is about to sit down to do another submission on something that's going to affect her farm very greatly, that people are getting really over some of this consultation. I'm wondering if there is an alternative option here. I'm really happy to put the chair and maybe one other councillor on into a subgroup to help the staff on this. What I would love to be seeing is us calling out to our constituents for examples of concerns they've got, so that I know, and you've covered some off in here, that we can help be the voice for those to outline issues that may be there. Some of us will know of wetlands like Scroll Plains, which you talked about, or the Logan Burn, which is going to make this really difficult. We've got some people who would love to use their farms as examples at our level that they can get us to understand their issues. And I think sometimes we don't ask our community if we can help them in this process to give clarity to the government well enough. It's fine that some people have talked to us about this. I'm not quite sure that we've covered all areas of Otago and that knowledge. So the question is, and I'm sorry about that large context, is there another option that we could have a discrete number of councillors working with you to ensure that there's other examples may be considered to give an even better enriched submission, but also to assist our community to reflect their concerns?
I think we have in the past, and Councillor Malcolm usefully assisted us on another recent submission on the ETS where we provided some examples, and we're really keen to do that. And we did that with the last submission on the wetlands regulations. When the team work on this, they don't do it in a linear way or all at the same time. So it tends to be bits here and there. I'm not quite sure in terms of working with existing work programs how we would do that, but we're very keen to get information in, and I am happy to have a think about how we could do that small group. But examples are super useful because they show to the ministry what it is that we're talking about on the ground and that they don't necessarily understand when their words on a page. So the more examples we can get and include, we're absolutely keen to do that.
So can I confirm that this is a call out, should the ODT want to assist us, for any examples of wetland delineation or any of these other matters addressed in this report from our community, to provide those examples so that we may consider them as part of our submission, and equally we may be able to assist them.
The submission closes on the 10th of July.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, just so that we
that isn't long, but people are sitting down doing this and scratching their heads about how to articulate this. It would be great, and this is the problem, is the short duration periods. I think I once suggested we should be the first ones, because we've got paid people doing this, to get our submission in and out in the public so that people can copy parts that suit them. But we're not even in that position to give them those timeframes. It's really, really hard. The community are really, really finding this tough. There's some really good communities, stakeholder, industry groups that are doing work on this, but each example is exactly the goal that will help the process be much better. And I think the call out to the community to give us examples would be brilliant, whether it be the biodiversity stuff or the wetland stuff.
To you, Mr. Chair.
That's a long question.
Probably two things to note. In the report, I tried to summarize some of the key changes, and I also tried to outline give you a bit of a sneak preview of our thinking so far. The other thing is also we attached at the back of the report an MFE report. At the end, there are some questions, and we intend to structure our feedback to the ministry through those questions. So applying that structure. So perhaps that could be useful for councillors or constituents who want to give feedback.
Thank you. Well, I think the importance of being able to share, Anita has alluded to, examples that we may not be aware ourselves as elected members, and the call out, I hope that the ODT do pick up on that thing, because that's it would be useful to have a greater in-depth knowledge as we work our way through these processes and that. So, okay, I don't think we can solve that right here, other than rattling the cage with the ODT and I suppose putting a call out to the community like you've already done, Kate.
I think there are other ways we can put a call out to the community.
No, for sure, but we're not going to resolve that right here and now. I'm just,
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate, a call out to the ODT sounds good, except for we need to get the results back in the next few days so I think what Kate might have been saying is there's other ways we can touch base with key groups we already know and quickly ask for perhaps case studies, but also giving ourselves credit that our staff have been actively working with FMUs and catchments for a long time. We have experts within our staff who do understand a lot of these issues, I think, as well. Not taking away from direct feedback on a case study basis, well, we had a lot of strength to our submission, but I'm not sure that hundreds of submissions from the Catlins right through to North Otago at the moment in the next few days is going to be realistic. There'll be a broad range of thoughts on wetlands. If we maybe touch base with a few groups that we know are actively involved, that would be really helpful. But we need to understand that they are involved with industry groups as well, I suppose, and there'll be a number of submissions going through. We as ORC also need to think about what our role is and what our submission would be in terms of our role of looking after these wetlands too. And they may be slightly different from, say, a landowner's view. So, all of that to take into account, but hey, it's 3 days or something that we need these in, so let's be realistic.
Can we ask Anita that if you're looking for input from the wider community, that you use our networks to tap into for that purpose? If there was, and you use the, oh, sorry.
I think my ears are blocked. Apologies.
Oh, sorry. Can we take it that? Can we take it that you will take advantage of our networks if and when required? And you use the example of Kevin with the carbon forestry impacts in North Otago. And can we take it that you will touch base with us and let us know, look, we'd really appreciate some feedback on this topic. We're a bit, I don't know, void of some practical scenarios, so to speak.
Absolutely. And you'll see the 2021 feedback was attached to this report, which does have the photos in it, just setting out that it's not, it's not necessarily a black and white issue when it comes to wetlands, and we do want to make sure for everyone's sake that everybody understands the expectations when we're delineating them. So I can absolutely do that. There's we can give you what's coming, and if you've got examples of things, it just grounds it a bit more for the people in Wellington, I think.
Could we ask our comms people to put something out to the ODT, just saying short time frame, anything you've got to add, so as that goes, and then the ODT will know what we're actually even asking about and what the question is.
It's confusing for the community.
Well, I don't know. Well, that's why I'm saying. Then you can put a message that isn't confusing rather than just saying, hopefully the ODT will pick this up. We can actually put out what it is, what time frame we've got, what it is that we're seeking.
I thought we just said we wouldn't go out to the ODT as the best way forward.
Oh, did we? Yeah. I thought it was just one
more. Our networks. That's what Andrew just said.
I'm asking not just to go to our networks, because networks are people who are connected to industries who've already sometimes got people who are already making submissions and things. They're the people who've got the finances and the money in the clout and are already making their own submissions. I'm asking for the other people who are individuals just to be captured with that too. And no harm in asking.
True. And I think if it's clearly targeted what we're asking, rather than sort of broad, if it's, we want some, practical examples around, the current definitions of wetlands and how they would impact on a farming situation. I don't know. Something along those lines where it's quite targeted.
We'll have a look and see if there are gaps where we think, in this particular one, where we think that some examples will be useful, and we'll flip that out to you all tonight Sorry, Tom. But we'll start doing the same for the other ones that are coming through. So, for example, we're bringing the NPSIB to you at SMP this month, and the same thing if there are instances where that we think will be useful for on the ground examples, then we can give you some, some topics for you to reach out to your contacts and give us examples. 2 or 3 really illustrative examples is what we're looking for when we do this stuff. We don't want hundreds and hundreds, but a couple of really useful examples is always helpful. So we can do that for this one, and then we'll do that as a practice going forward if that's useful.
And no reason the ODT can't be used in a direct way as well, potentially.
Potentially, I wouldn't want to commit our comms team. I would like to not be the one that's doing that. I think.
Yeah, maybe Andrew, can I just jump in? So I'll have a chat to Joe and we can talk to Anita. But we can't, other than taking out advertising, we can't guarantee that they would run a story. But I think the best thing is to talk to Joe and Simon Hartley, the media lead, about the opportunities that are there, because there are challenges given timing of this one in particular. But I think best to leave it with Anita and myself and Tom to talk with Simon and Joe and just see if and how the ODT could be used to support the collection of examples. And then there are other ways through ORC social media channels that we might be able to get some direct feedback as well.
Thank you, Richard. Cheers. All sorted? Okay. So the recommendations 1, 2, and 3. Someone like to move?
Yes, I will.
Move Carmen, seconded Gretchen. Any discussion? If not, put the 3 together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
Moving on to 7.9. Welcome back to Gavin. Thanks. Oh, Delina as well. Sorry. Delina realises we've dealt with the So, 7.9, this is the regional pest and licensing operation plan. This report is provided to council to adopt the ORC's regional pest management plan 22-23 operation plan, actually. So we've got a couple of attachments there. The reply from the minister about the last operational plan that he received a copy of, and also the biosecurity operational plan 22-23. The final, obviously, is amendments attached as well. Welcome to Murray Boardman, Performance and Delivery Specialist. Good to have you here, Murray, and welcome back to Libby and Gavin. So essentially, this is a formal requirement that we need to step through on an annual basis. The 3 recommendations are there. Sorry, the 4 recommendations are there. Murray, was there anything you wanted to make in terms of any comment as the co-author of the report? Or Libby?
I can give a quick overview.
Lovely, thank you.
If that's all right. So as the chair's described, we've got a statutory requirement that we have a plan which operationalises our regional pest management plan under the Biosecurity Act. So that's what we're presenting today. This operational plan sets out our key performance indicators, which we'll be aiming to achieve for the next financial year. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the key changes for this operational plan versus the previous 2 years. So the 2022-23 operational plan is a refinement of the last 2 plans, incorporating the learnings that we have made over the last 2 years. We've incorporated the funding support that we provide to other organisations, as well as KPIs around the agreed outcomes we're seeking through our nationally funded programs, such as wild and conifers and wallabies. We have also adapted how we undertake our inspections, with a change from focusing on one pest in our pest plan to visiting a site and looking at all of the issues that are relevant under the RPMP. We've also continued to progress work around ensuring that pest management actions are effective through data analysis and trend monitoring. And one example of this is the use of GIS to show data that we collect spatially. Through the data we collect, we will also have a focus moving forward on the creation and dissemination of information with the aim of increasing education within our communities around what pest issues are present, them understanding what their obligations are, and us providing leadership and support to communities to improve our collective environment. And finally, we're going to utilise biodiversity and ecosystem mapping to help prioritise our biosecurity inspections that we undertake by ensuring that we have a focus on the protection of the areas that are of the highest value from a biodiversity perspective. So those are the key changes. And is there anything to add, Murray?
No,
Thank you very much. Hilary, then Carmen.
When does this have to be with the minister?
Within 5 months normally of the start of the financial year.
Right, so we don't have to do it. I mean, it isn't urgent to do it before the 1st July or anything.
I can answer that. No, it's not time bound in terms of submitting the plan to the minister. The report on the plan is time bound around being 5 months after the end of the financial year. That's a report on how we've given effect to our operational plan, a separate thing.
Right.
This thing is not time bound. It just has to be an annual review.
Thank you. Any further? Oh, sorry, Carmen.
Thank you for that. I appreciate this program. Just talking about it, this is more holistic approach, isn't it? For example, am I right that you could be out the back of the high country and you could be looking at wilding hinds as well as wallabies, and you could be looking at old man's beard as well as rabbits? You know, those two different things sometimes can complement each other. It could be other things of that, isn't it? That's where it becomes much more doable and operative. Am I right there, Libby?
Through the chair, yes, that's right. So we're looking at, instead of just going out and doing a rabbit inspection while we're on, or any other kind of inspection under our pest plan, we will look at it holistically in regards to what the rules are in the regional pest management plan and what other issues arise other than just rabbits. If that's what we went to the property to look for, we'd make sure that we're covering off everything else. And we do that anyway, but this is just formalising that this is the way that we work, which is a good thing.
Yeah. And the second part to this is you've got the word "and" underlined, haven't you? In A, continue property inspections, etc. Feral rabbits on private land and land owned by territorial authorities and Crown entities. So there's there's it's not just one, is there? There's several.
Yeah,
that's great. Right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Michael Walls.
Thank you. Can I just clarify that this item on the agenda today is all about us giving our 22-23 plan to the minister? Is that correct?
We're talking the operational plan?
Correct, yeah. So we're not being asked to input into the plan. We are simply being asked to provide a copy. Oh no, we are being asked to approve it. And then we're being asked to proactively provide a copy to the minister, correct?
Yeah, but it's not an opportunity. Well, I don't believe it's an opportunity to relitigate the operational plan. This, to my understanding, that would have been done at implementation committee or an earlier meeting. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Gavin, this is a obviously a requirement under the Biosecurity Act 1993 that this needs to be supplied to the minister, this operational plan, and it aligns essentially with our financials and aligns with our intent in our pest management plan. Am I on the right track there, Gavin?
Yes, the key thing is the recommendations include approving this plan.
Yes, that was my understanding too. So, and also it's changed, hasn't it? So if I look at clause 4 of this report, it says that the 22-23 operational plan builds on the 21-22 operational plan, identifying and strengthening new areas. So I mean, it's a change, isn't it, from the previous one? Is that right, Gavin?
Yes, apologies. That's correct. The plan has been reviewed and a number of changes have been made, and to assist council, we've included the track change versions to show where it's changed relative to the current operating plan.
Now, the one that we particularly raised during implementation or whatever particular committee, and you'll remember, I'm sure, me raising with you, was how do we know we're effective? In other words, the monitoring of the pest program and how effective it is. And you've now got a clause 4C, which says increase focus on describing the effectiveness of pest management actions through data analysis and trend monitoring, including spatial analysis using GIS. And you've just talked about that, correct?
Correct.
And that wasn't there last year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So can I then take you to rabbits, which is page 10 of the plan and page 773 of the agenda item. And I'll also take you to lagrosiphon, which is page 12 and 13 of the plan and 775.6 of the agenda item. We'll deal with rabbits first.
You have a rabbit sphere.
So page 10, feral rabbits, 3.41. And that's the things that we're going to do in terms of this coming financial year in terms of rabbits. And I assume that those are the deliverables, aren't they? They're all outlined there.
Yes, that's correct.
So there it says in the third bullet, well, sort of bullet point, monitor trends in rabbit densities. And there's a nothing of rabbit night counts completed. I imagine that you're going to do 16 rabbit night counts, right?
Through the chair, correct.
Okay. What's the difference between that and what you did this year?
Through the chair, rabbit trend monitoring using night counts is a continuous process that we use for trend analysis. So we have to keep doing them regularly to build up a trend that we can see as verifiable if it's increasing or decreasing. So having a consistent monitoring regime will help provide a better understanding of the effectiveness or the changes that are happening in terms of rabbit densities across the region.
No, I'm sorry, I don't think you've understood my question. I know what rabbit night counts are, and I know that the council's been doing them for years, plural. The issue I'm asking is, you're going to do 16 this current financial year. How many did you do last year?
13.
13.
Yes.
So you think that will satisfy increased focus, that will give you enough data analysis and trend monitoring to know if you're being effective in your program?
Currently,
3 night counts.
Through the chair, currently we're having a consultant looking at our night count regime and our blood work for the virology of the virus to support our trend analysis of rabbit densities. And that
so you don't know if you've got the right program at the moment. Is that what you're saying?
Could you just let Murray finish the previous question, and then we'll just go back to you for the next question. So do you want to finish the one you just on, Murray?
Yeah, we've got a consultant looking at assessing the viability of our night counts routes. The minimum number that we will be expecting will be 16 for this coming financial year.
Now that answer to me suggests that you actually don't know if your night count process at the moment is the correct one. Is that right?
It's being reviewed at the present time.
Is that a yes or a no?
It is currently under review at the present time, and we will not know the final result until that report has been delivered.
Right, so we're assessing whether or not the ability for us to determine whether or not there are enough rabbits or how many rabbits there are, that currently is out for review, because at the moment we don't know if it's accurate or not.
No, I would not say that we don't know whether it's accurate or not. We know that there is some standards that we have to meet to ensure that we have good quality data to be able to base our trend analysis on.
Okay, but sorry to labour the point. but all you're doing is increasing the number of night counts from 13 to 16.
No, I wouldn't say that, because we're getting better quality data and more representative data to be able to show that the trends are moving in one direction or another.
Yeah. But we don't know what that trend is at the moment.
No, because that's the essence
That's
of
what
what
you're doing the
analysis
review
is
on.
meant to be doing.
Yeah, okay. Lagrosiphon, page 12 and 13. I don't see anything there that gives a percentage or what you're trying to do in terms of controlling lagrosiphon. You have a look at it, and you look at the table on the top of page 13. There's nothing there, and there's no targets, are there? There's no, you're not actually doing anything that is actually going to control lagrosiphon. Rather to measure it.
Through the chair, our aim for lagrosiphon is to monitor the water bodies that we're looking at. So we've got a target of 18 inspection visits to the water bodies, which are listed at the bottom of page 13. So that's the work that we do, but we don't have in our schedule right now to undertake any control of lagrosiphon. The only way that we would undertake that is through the funding we provide to LINZ. So that's what we're.
But we provide. You're absolutely right. We provide funding to LINZ and we assist them, and we're a part of whatever working groups, etc. there are. But we don't have a measure about how we're going to control lagrosiphon in the region, do we? We haven't set one as the Otago Regional Council, even though we are statutorily responsible for managing this lagrosiphon pest.
Evan, do you want to jump in?
Yes, through Mr. Chair. The problem we have is that council has no strategy around lagrosiphon. Similarly, no strategy around wild and conifer control, and therefore we're never sure if the $50,000 funding contribution is the right amount, nor sure where it should be invested. So you'll recall that when council signed off the big increase in the biosecurity program and the long-term plan, there were two things that were added, and they were those strategies for wild and conifers and for lagrosiphon. And I think in the course of preparing that strategy, we'll then have more specificity around some targets around what we actually want to achieve with respect to lagrosiphon and also wild and conifers.
So that's going to happen in the next financial year?
Yes, the one that starts tomorrow or this week. Yes, it does. And what that will mean is we'll be able to have a much improved operational plan, because we'll be able to incorporate the kind of things that Council of Laws is looking for. In the meantime, this is what we've got.
Wouldn't it be a good idea, if you're reporting to the Minister, Gavin, to flag that that's what you're going to be doing in the next 12 months in your report? Because I can see a vast hole there that I'm sure any person in Wellington will see as well, and that is the lack of an ability to be able to monitor what you're doing and its effectiveness. If you were saying to me, as you've just said, there's no strategy on lagrosiphon or wild and conifers, but we are actually recognising that we're going to do something about it, wouldn't that be a good thing to put in the report?
Yes, we can do that. In the last letter we sent to the Minister, we did flag the increased investment of council in biosecurity and highlighted a number of things. I can't recall whether we stated those things, but we will include those in the next letter to the Minister.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin. Any further questions? Kate.
Sorry, I feel like I've misread this, so I just need to check something. We've got in the current plan, nodding thistles, that goes out and we add in Russell lupin, or we develop a strategy about Russell lupins in there. What has happened to the nodding thistles that we've taken and ragwort that we've taken them out? And nodding thistles have been a huge problem this year. Around our area, the climate has been particularly bad for it, or generous or good or something. But I just want to check. But we're not reporting on the effectiveness for a wee while, are we, of the current plan?
So through the chair, the nodding thistles and ragwort require a complaint from a neighbour to be able to be worked through. So that will be covered under our administration processes of compliance. So we will still be inspecting nodding thistles and ragworts when we get a complaint in.
Okay, sorry, and I did understand that. That was in this year's plan. That goes, but CAT stays in because it's an administrative one.
Yeah.
But the effectiveness of our control, we're taking that out without, and this is where I think I must have wrong. I appreciate there's quarterly reports on the plan, but the effectiveness of the plan, we don't get that report until after we've actually changed our plan this time. Is that right?
You'll get a report in September
Yeah.
on the effectiveness of our last plan.
Our last plan, but we're changing it now without, and possibly nodding thistles is the worst example. I just want to check that we're actually changing things now without having that report, and that seems odd to me. I'm happy if you think it's the best thing to do, though.
Yes, so I guess the effectiveness report will help us inform the next year. So we're kind of like a year out
behind,
okay, but
okay.
next year will be recalled up through our effectiveness
Okay.
monitoring, which will inform the next plan.
Okay, and the only other question I had, I'm absolutely thrilled. We sat through Eco Fund and there was an absolutely brilliant application, unfortunately unfunded, for control of Russell lupins. I'm thrilled that we're doing a strategy for that. My understanding, just because I want to be sure as what comes first, the chicken and the egg, or the egg, sorry. What funding have we got this year for the strategy, and more importantly, for putting the strategy? Are we writing a strategy that is limited by budget, or are we writing the best strategy we can get and then going to the long-term plan for the budget? Because there are two different ways of doing it.
We will be writing the strategy to inform the long-term plan, so
Yeah.
that we have the appropriate money to deliver that strategy.
Yeah.
So we'll
Okay.
write a plan as I guess there'll be options.
With options, great,
Yeah.
and that's fine. It's a really difficult one, and seeing what that community up there are doing to, and not supported by us to control Russell lupins, I feel really, really sorry for them. Yeah. Well, the fact that Tourism New Zealand keeps on posting beautiful photos of Russell lupins, phew, it's not helpful.
Thank you, Hilary, then Gretchen.
Probably I should understand this, but I don't totally. Where does it fit in? And I can see that there's an awkwardness and that there's a new operational plan now, and then we look at how effective last year's was sort of with that gap. But I'm just wondering where our input, if there is expected to be any, is welcomed in creating the operational plan, the next one. I mean, this one's in front of us now to approve today, which we've just seen in the last couple of days. Do we have, you'll learn something when you put in the next one, which you might have halfway fixed because of the current one. Is there a point at which we would be expected to, or you'd welcome, or whatever input from us into this thing that will land on our desk this time next year as a fait accompli, sort of, in a sense?
I think we wouldn't expect that you do provide input into it, but
Yes,
we
yeah, that's really what I was.
if you wanted to, and I guess through our quarterly reporting, we report back on what we're achieving as a biosecurity team. We do that quarterly through the Environmental Implementation Committee. We'll take on board feedback through that forum to incorporate into the plan.
So we're noting this report, which is a report that you're making, to noting it and acknowledging that you're sending it off to the minister rather than us having any input. I'm not wanting any. I'm just trying to understand. So today, what we're intending to do is note that that's what you're intending to do.
Yes, but not just send it to the minister, that will be implementing it for the next financial year as a team.
Yes,
These will be the KPIs that
so it's a noting paper.
The through the chair, the critical thing is that the plan that we're actually implementing is the RPMP, which is the current one that's in existence, and this is an operationalizing for the annual year coming up that this operational plan refers to. So it was changed from last year, and it will probably be changed for the subsequent years as well.
So, sorry, is this the operational? So
this is the
in recommendation 2, approves the Otago Regional Council's Regional Pest Management Plan. Operational plan. So you're not asking us to note it, you're asking us to approve it.
Correct.
So that's sort of an active thing for us to do, if you see what I mean, compared with just noting it. And that sort of suggests that I should have lent my mind to it and get in amongst it or something, whereas we of course haven't, and it's presented sort of in a noting paper sort of fashion.
I think that I'm not sure.
I'm happy for it to be a noting, but I'm
No,
just,
no.
if we're approving it,
Yes.
it's very difficult for us to approve something that we haven't seen up until 2 days ago and we don't know anything much about, and it's whatever. But if we're noting that that's what the staff are intending to do, because it's an operational matter, because we've done the pest plan overall and they're carrying out the pest plan and just telling us about it, then I'm quite comfortable to note it as telling us about it. If I'm supposed to approve it, I feel I should be a bit more active about something that I don't understand.
Yeah, I think our contribution has been either feedback through the environmental implementation plan or through, when we've discussed the regional pest management plan over the last 6 to 8 months or so. There've been probably a number of interactions that we've had where how successful the pest management plan has been thus far, and obviously this is really like the engine of the pest management plan. That's the way I see it. The operational plan, this is the doing part.
Could we change this to note rather than approve the plan?
I think it needs to be approved to be for the minister. I think that's the whole purpose of this. I think is for council to approve it, so then it can be sent to the minister to say that yes, the council has not noted it but approved it, because I suppose that's a lot stronger. In my mind, anyway, it's much stronger. In other words, we've basically approved it to be implemented.
Could we, in that case, next time get it in time for us to actually engage with it, please?
I was going to ask a question, but it was a really small one. It's about the strategy, and I'll come back to that. But just having been on that panel with you, Andrew, on the regional pest plan, and just reflecting on how different it is to a lot of other processes under the Biosecurity Act, and you actually have to, you guys remember that, you have to actually put into it the amount of money you have particular plans for how you're going to deal to each pest, and then also you have to put in how you're going to fund it. So you've got limited ability to be able to then change that much as a council. We could tweak it a bit, but it's different from other scenarios where we've kind of committed ourselves to things. And as you've said, we have tweaked. That's good. We've done that, haven't we? But then it brings me to the next question. We've talked about the strategy that we're going to have coming forward. And that would look at important matters like what would make the most sense for things like wilding trees and Lagorasyphon. Michael Laws has mentioned those, and they are important, so we all agree. Rabbits, that was my question actually. So thinking about the strategy, what would actually go into it? Would rabbits have another thunk as well? That was Michael's other point. I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to do with this. And then what would happen as a result of that strategy? Would we then actually need to feed it through regional plan, pest plan process to then be able to lock it into the financials that then go into long-term planning? And and then there's Hillary's issues, because it is a bit different. I agree. Normally you would have a look at what we wanted to spend on, but we don't have limited range because we've already locked ourselves in with the pest plan and committed ourselves to spending. So it's a bit confusing, but if you could just talk us through what a strategy would do and what would happen as a result of it.
So through you, Mr. Chair, there are 2 strategies and they are species specific. one will deal with lagrosiphon, the other will deal with wilding conifers. There is no strategies for any other species. The driver is that those are both species that we provide funding to others for. So in the case of lagrosiphon, council contributes $50,000 to LINS, but what's lacking is any kind of direction to LINS about how we want the money to be spent, whereabouts and that sort of thing, and also any guidance as to whether the $50,000 is the right amount of money for council. So with a strategy, it would answer those sorts of questions for you. It's non-statutory. If as a consequence of the strategy, there was some things around rules and effectiveness of rules, then that may very well trigger a plan review to incorporate them, but that's obviously something for you to decide at a later date. And similarly with the wilding conifers, we make a funding contribution to the Whakatipu and Central Otago trusts, but there's no guidance on how we would want the money to be spent, or no sense of whether that's enough money or whether other places should have similar sorts of investments. So the strategy will answer those kind of questions.
Thanks, I understand.
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you for the answer given. If there's no further questions, I'll move 1, 2, 3, and 4. My second by Carmen. Any discussion? If not, I'll put those 4 motions together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much for your good work. Bit of a mountain to climb to get to this point, so well done. Have a breather now. What I'm going to suggest is that we have a 15-minute break, so we'll reconvene at 20 to 4. Stand adjourned.
Thank you. Second.
Motion made, please say aye. Carried.
You're allowed to have a cup of tea, Kevin.
Didn't want to be called a slacker, Brian. I've got bloody COVID.
They can do better.
Welcome back, everybody. We'll now reconvene the council meeting. Thank you. We are up to.
They don't say it's here. So
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Obviously, afternoon tea was just a little bit too large. Yeah.
My fault. Yeah.
Okay, we're up to 7.10. This is the Galloway Depot and oats cooking equipment. This report provides further information on the Galloway Depot and oats cooking equipment decision on the future of these assets. Author and endorser is Nick Donnelly. There's a couple of recommendations there, but before I go any further, I'll just hand over to Gary. He's had some feedback from the community, and yeah, maybe Gary, you want to just explain, looking forward to buying some more time to allow the community to feedback to council. So,
yes, yeah. So thank you. At the rabbit equipment sale, I was approached by a community group, and then prior to that, at just a function I was at, I was approached by another community group, and specifically on the oat cooker. And those groups are established in pest management, 2 different locations in Otago, in central Otago. And they said to me, expressed real concern around the the oat cooker being lost or sold. So it's acknowledged sort of amongst contractors, amongst the community groups that are out there now, that it's not functioning the way it is at the moment. So it's seeing that, well, you know, it's an asset that has to sit there, and then it only gets called on specific times, and it needs a number of ducks to it aligned as to whether you would need to cook oats or whether to the volume that one can provide. But it is seen that under council ownership and the current model, that it's a challenge. But what these guys are saying is that we see a desperate need for this asset into the future. So on that, I had said to them, I'd really like to come and talk to you about that and just see whether there's some options we can flesh out and talk through about what would best fit. And so I'm sorry I didn't get to staff prior to this paper coming through on that discussion. Illness got in the way, and just the ability to see what I could tee up with these guys. So if there was a will amongst councillors, what I would ask is that could we lie this paper on the table until the next council meeting? And what I'll endeavour to do, with maybe the assistance of other councillors if they're interested, to try and get some meetings with these groups and just flesh out what's their interest with them, what are they thinking? Are they thinking they'd rather see it retained where it is? Are they thinking they'd like just the assets to sit above the ground to be at a location for them? Or would that be available for all of the community, or are they thinking just for them? I'd like to flesh out further this desperate need that they are identifying. So yeah, that would be my suggestion to council would be, would you consider laying on the table until next council meeting? And I will endeavour to get that done with other councillors as soon as possible.
So really just looking at buying some time to fully canvass the people that have already expressed interest to you previously about what they see in terms of the value in the depot and plant at this point in time. Because I suppose once we approve a sale, there's no turning back. So this is, I suppose, a final opportunity for them to come to us with some sort of proposal that meets our requirements as well from what's been highlighted in the report.
Yeah, and I was just a bit worried that in the recommendations for the paper, if we move on the paper, that some of that, what might be innovative potential options that they may put to us, might not be arrived at if we advance under the recommendations.
We'll just go to Pim.
Yeah, so Gary did talk to me about this when I met with him and Alex last week, and actually Amanda and I actually got to see the oat cookers, actually wandered over and got the key and had a look at it too. So I'm quite familiar with the asset now and the condition of it. I did talk to Nick about this And Nick's view is there's no real rush for us. You know, we're aware we have this asset, and council's aware that we've been divesting of both the rabbit cutters and potentially the oatcocker. But yes, there's some benefits actually if Gary's looking at maybe funding somebody who might be interested in purchasing it, there may well be some benefits. So if Gary's asking for us to bring the paper back for the next council meeting, my expectation is that Nick won't have any problems with that. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. I mean, as you just said, there's no rush with this. The asset's been sitting there. It hasn't been used for some time. You know, an extra month or two isn't going to make any difference.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Hilary.
Just two things, one a question and one well, perhaps they're both questions. If it looks like where that's going involves selling a piece of land likely, I would like a better idea than the GV of the land or GV of the land, even if it's just the average price of land in this area has gone up 30% since the valuations, and so maybe this has to, or fair land or whatever. And secondly, some sort of acknowledgement if we end up selling the land that money that comes in isn't money to just disappear into a budget of somebody's. It's our money to reallocate for something that we should have been doing or whatever. So that money doesn't just disappear and get absorbed into whatever else is going on. If somebody's got a proposal for it or something, that would be different, but that it's acknowledged, here is some X budget money, the way we would if it's negative money. So just.
Thanks, Hilary. Kevin.
Yeah, look, Andrew, I think that's just pretty good logic, really, endorsing what Nick, Pim and Gary have said, and look, I'd be happy to move to have it lay on the table to the next meeting.
Thank you. You happy to move, Gary?
Yeah.
Second by Kevin.
Yep.
Sorry. Is there are there any other questions before we go to the motion? Straightforward. Okay. Let's go to the motion now. Are there any speakers? Richard.
I'll be honest, we've been discussing this for a while, and it seems, yeah, exactly, there's no reason to rush it. But I'm just wanting to ensure that we're protecting ourselves going forward. And that means particularly Gary, I don't know, this is the Galloway depot. Whether the process would be for Gary to lead us talking to potential people, or whether we would ask someone else to lead it just to protect you, Gary. I don't know, only you know that question, but that's my question. I don't have a problem with leaving this on the table, but whether you're the person to be doing that is the question. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want me to respond?
And can I just make a comment? Yeah. But shoot me down if it's wrong. But I would have imagined if people like, and I'll just use Mike Skur as an example, someone like him, I imagine you would be encouraging to formally talk to others to get some sort of confirmation that there's a group out there that want to focus on it, rather than you coming back with a proposal. You may have a different view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all about them, really. I would just be looking to, I suppose, facilitate a discussion and just show them that, well, we need to move this situation on and flesh out their thinking. And then my interest is around how does this best fit with an overall community outcome that may be something that could be entertained by council. So it's not me trying to broker a deal as such. It is just, I suppose, trying to hurry these groups along and getting to an outcome.
Picking up on Gretchen's point. Sorry,
I'm happy to second it instead of Gary if that turns out.
That helps, yeah. picking up on Gretchen's point, is it better that Gary has some staff support? So then it's actually it looks
council.
Yes, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, look, at the end of the day, we have to go through a defensible process of sale. So all I thought that Gary was asking for was a few more months to get some people lined up who might have a proposal for us, and then Nick and I will sit down and work out how to put out a tender or something. Or we have to still have a defensible mechanism for selling the asset. But at the moment, I don't know that we've got a lot of interested buyers, have we, Nick? And we don't even have a real good idea what the value might be. So I wasn't expecting that Gary was going to do the sale or stitch up the deal, but he might do. He might have a proposal that says, council, couldn't you be more helpful? That could be a different proposal. But yeah, the actual sale of the asset, I wouldn't put that in Gary's hands, because it's creates a conflict for him.
Yeah, no, totally. I don't want to be involved in that.
Yeah, it was just the question of not knowing who, because when you didn't talk about that, you talked about people, but we can't really do that here. Understand that. I'm just raising with you whether it was someone that was like in your area, or was something that you yourself might personally use, or something like that. That's a bit different, but only you can judge that, and that's all I was thinking. So that's in your camp.
And I'm judging it and saying I'm very comfortable with that no conflict issue would really arise. It is purely about how you facilitate that discussion between genuine approaches from the community to me as a councillor.
Nick, you're comfortable with this, Nick? All Gary's asking for really is some time to get some ducks lined up with the community. We're not in a rush to put this on the market. It's not big dollars in terms of, we're not sure what it's worth, but it's probably not huge dollars in terms of the Otago. Hillary's touched on the value of the land, which might be slightly more valuable. But Nick, I would have thought that if we had a proposal and then we went through a defensible process of sale, then the council could consider the various proposals. It might not be the highest bid that we would take if there were other, if we had other criteria that might be of more interest to council. So my thinking is we'd go through the proposal, the staff would actually sell the oat cooker, make sure that you've had time to get your ducks lined up, Gary, or people in the community if they've got an interest. And then we would bring a paper back in terms of our expectation for selling. Does this need a council decision, Nick, or is it a delegation?
Well, no, I think what Councillor Kelleher is proposing is just to leave the paper on the table while he sort of makes some inquiry of the community as to whether or not the recommendation that we've put there of offering the equipment for relocation is feasible. He knows of a couple there. We've got other people, whether they're the same, but we've got people who have expressed interest in either in the equipment or the site. The issue is that the values in the land and buying the whole thing, including the land, could be prohibitive to any a contractor or to just community groups. That's why we looked at the option of potentially just the equipment if they can relocate it to somewhere that they've already got land, because it becomes far more cost effective. If Councillor Kelleher wants to, take a little bit of time and just inquire of the people he's got, we've also got the list of everybody who expressed interest in the carrot cutting equipment. So we've got a fairly extensive list. The plan was that based on the paper, we would go out and advertise, obviously, a tender process to sell, to relocate, use the contacts database we've got, advertise it wider, and see what responses we got, and then depending on that, council could make a decision whether to sell or not. As you said, they might choose then to do that based on the proposals. But there'd be obviously any tender that we put out there would be on the basis that that we weren't committed to sell at all, and we weren't committed to sell to the highest bidder, because that way we could assess any proposal on on other factors other than just the price people were prepared to pay. So that was the idea. But if in the meantime, if Councillor Kelleher wants to make some more inquiry and we leave this on the table to the next meeting or the one after that, as I said, there's no rush to do any of this. The asset's been sitting there, it hasn't been used since whenever it was, early 2018, I believe it was. So there's no rush.
Hillary, you happy to?
I'm happy to move to leave it on the table.
Excellent. Kevin?
Or second it, whichever.
Kevin
somebody
will
else.
second it.
Yeah.
I hope.
Right.
He's got his
Yep,
thumb up.
he's got his thumb up. Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. This item was on the table. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Gary. Moving on to 711 Kurawao sales. This is one of Nick's papers. This report provided to Council's endorsement for the sale of freehold lands subject to entering into satisfactory terms and conditions. There's 3 recommendations there. This dovetails into the non-public item later on, which is the commercially sensitive information as part of the these sales. Nick, anything that you wanted to comment on at this stage with regard to these 2 proposals?
No, I'll just say that as you know, the recommendation there is for council to endorse the sale of these 2 properties. As it notes in the paper, it's a legislative process, so all we can do is the council can endorse it, but there's no option to not sell the properties because the legislation dictates that they have to be sold. And then we've just got the, subject to your endorsement, then authorising the chief executive and myself to complete the transactions. And as the chair just pointed out, we'll have a further discussion about any terms and conditions that might be imposed in completing the sale and purchase process.
Thank you, Nick. Questions? Oh, Brian?
Yeah, sorry. I see up in the west, there was recently a big land that was sold for carbon forestry. Is that, should I be asking questions about that?
Well, the reality is, as I said, it's a legislative process, so we can't actually dictate what they may or may not do with that land once they've freeholded it.
Okay, so we've got no choice. Okay,
Thank
you.
My understanding, Brian, it's a different entity. The entity was limited. I can't remember whatever other.
2021 limited.
Thank you. Isn't the same entity that bought the however many thousand hectares of the Wisp property. So completely different entities.
No, I understand that, but they might have the same reason. No, though, to be fair, Nick's answered the question. Thank you.
Hillary.
I've got a couple of questions relating to fencing.
Can I just, before you go there, is that in relation to the other paper?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Does it want to belong in the non?
Yeah, it's terms and conditions. It's the next paper.
Yeah.
Except that it's asking us to endorse a sale, which I'd rather do after we've done the next.
You're going to endorse the sale, Hillary,
because we have no choice. Okay. Beg your pardon. Sorry, silly me. I thought I was making a decision here. No, we're just, it's in the other paper. Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Hillary. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So how much land have we got left in that? parcel of Kuruwai land if these two sales go through?
So there was, it's in paragraph 9, there was 18 originally, and there's 4 left, of which these are 2 of them. So after these 2, there's 2 more. 2 remaining after these.
And that they're currently leased to people at the moment. Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, would someone like to move that we receive? Yep, excellent. Thanks, Carmen. We received the report, endorse the sale, and it's subject to those 2 under 3A and 3B, authorising the chief executive and CFO to execute the sale and purchase agreements, and authorise chief executive and general manager corporate services to sign an authority and instruction form for the sale of the lands. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put 1, 2, 3A and 3B all together. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Helen, good question.
Oh, was it? No.
I was Kate. Definitely was.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Can we move it?
Yes, I does. I just hear the second. So
yeah.
Okay. Kate seconded it. Correct.
Yeah.
I think I had because I had no choice.
Okay, it's been carried. Moving on to 7.12, the document signed under council seal.
Happy to move that.
Second.
Thank you, Carmen. Moved by Carmen, seconded by Kate. No for any discussion. No. Motion with vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 8. Thank you, Di, for that report. Chairperson's report set out there. Take it as read. Happy to answer any questions. Move. There's no questions. I'll move. You seconded, or yeah, it's a question.
I'm happy to second it, but I do have. Okay.
I'll move. You second. Question. Yep. Thank you.
My question is: are we being invited to answer Aaron Hawkins' request to take over the buses?
Yeah. So.
Is that something that we're supposed to be engaging with?
So Alexa, sure the Kate was in that conversation or not, but Alexa and I had talked about what the next steps were around making sure that we, as the Otago Regional Council, had a view before we went into those discussions. So I'm not sure, Alexa, the mechanism that you had thought about forming that view, whether it was a workshop scenario to look at, what are the blockages, what are the potential joint governance proposals or whatever. What did the RPTP allow us to look at going forward in light of what's been raised by both Mayor Bolt and Mayor Hawkins? But any thoughts?
I think we've gone back to them here and said to them that we will bring it to this council to find a way forward. And so I guess, does that need a resolution from us I would like to see us have a joint workshop and bring all of those parties together. I mean, connecting Dunedin, it doesn't work because it's only Dunedin. The Queenstown TGG doesn't work because it's only that. So it needs to be its own specific thing. And there's no entity for that at the moment, except the Regional Transport Committee, which is possibly the place for it. But no, I think not. I think this council needs to have a workshop with those 2 other councils and their infrastructure leads.
I'd like to have a workshop with only us. I think it's really awkward. This is a political decision, and our staff can only be helpful insofar as they can tell us what's actually possible or what the mechanism would be if we transferred governance. But having it with somebody else when really we just need to decide whether it's us or them or a combination who has the buses, and we've been invited by Erin to think that it's a major, that Mayor Hawkins, to think that the major issue here is a mode shift, and we've dismally failed to shift any mode, so they can have it as far as I'm concerned. But in any case, the next thing seems to me to be a workshop or something with the information as to who has it just with us. I really think it's going to be much more awkward if we try and put us all together, especially at a workshop, because no decisions can be.
I don't believe we need to make a decision yet, but I believe we need to hear their concerns, and we've gone back and said that we would, didn't your letter say that we will come back to them with a meeting?
But it also said that we were going to discuss it ourselves,
to
sort of formulate a view and then go back to them with some suggested dates to get together.
Well, we could have our workshop first, but our workshop won't allow us to understand their perspectives fully, which I think is important.
Yeah, I'm totally in support of what Hilary is saying. I think we need a workshop first to give staff the opportunity to advise this council what our position may or may not be. And of course, public transport and other transport responsibilities, which Dunedin City or maybe Queenstown hold at a TLA level, are equally as interesting to us as just public transport, because there are a lot of interactions between decisions that are made around all sorts of transport decision, strategies. So I see this as quite a complex issue. You might look at saying at some point, well, those interactions in terms of, for instance, car parking, or what you do with different roads, that might make it easier to bike to work. Those interactions might lead us to get to a point where some sort of co-governance makes sense between, in each case, the two entities. But if we're actually considering giving up a huge chunk of our business, that's something that staff will have a real view on. And I think it would be really unfair to have a joint workshop before we have the opportunity of advising our own governance body about that in the first instance. I've got numerous staff who obviously rely on this as part of their livelihood.
It's something like 40%, I think, of our business.
Yeah.
That both mayors have been in touch in the last 48 hours, wanting to make sure that we make some progress as a follow-up to the letter prior to the election. And I've basically gone back to them and said, look, we need to get our ducks in a row first, and we'll come back to you. Was what I said to both mayors about 24 hours ago.
I might add that I've talked to staff about this, and my understanding is that there's a real interest in the way we run public transport, but this is at a time when TLAs are losing a big chunk of their business through the loss of management of the ferry waters. That shouldn't be influencing this at all. And actually, to be honest, they haven't been very forthcoming in discussing with us, other than through the Joint Transport Committee, all sorts of decisions that they make that actually impact on our public transport provision. And they're actually very particular of that area of their work. So it makes sense to me that we ultimately work together in partnership to govern this area, but not necessarily give up this provision, which we currently rate for, and I suspect we've mostly done a good job of.
No, well said. Okay, thank you. So are you happy to move along those lines, Hilary, that
I'd like to move that we ask our Chief Executive to arrange a workshop when he is in a position to have staff provide the information. And I would hope that that would include, since it's not just the buses, it's, what implications it would be on that. We currently have DCC owning the land that the bus stops are on, and then building the bus stops, and then us building the bus stops, and then on their land and the roads and all sorts of, even just thinking of public transport and mode shift and things, there's a whole lot of different things. And so I would like to move that the Chief Executive organise a workshop when he's in a position to have his staff provide the information we need to have to usefully talk about it.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you, Michael. Any discussion? Pretty straightforward.
I wonder if we get a bit careful about wording that with, oh, have I frozen?
You're good.
Seems that we need to direct staff what to bring to this workshop. Is it an ideas on governance models? What are we asking them to bring?
We don't direct staff, of course, Councillor Forbes, but I was suggesting
to ask the CE to direct staff to. What are we asking for, Hilary? It's all very well to ask for a workshop.
I was having the confidence to think that our Chief Executive would understand what issues may be ones that need to be presented to meaningfully talk about that. And our Chief Executive is nodding his head, so I'm hoping that he does have confidence that he knows what sorts of things could be. Of course, he can come back to us and say, I'm not sure whether you want this one in the workshop, this issue or not, or he can be confident enough to bring what he thinks we need.
Can I just jump in? There's a fairly good feel from what the City Council, Dunedin City Council, are after through their submissions to the last 2 annual plans. So that's relatively clear. I'm not so sure whether Queenstown Lakes submitted in the during those processes or not, but that's a bit of a framework for what they're looking at, trying to achieve. Do you need any further information from us at this point?
No, I mean, the only clarity that I would suggest is that from my perspective, Alexa, you have every right to direct the Chief Executive. I don't know that you've got the right to ask me to direct staff. That's quite a moot point.
Okay. Whatever words you want to use, do you know what it is that we want? And do you know that they have, and the staff will know, through the long-term planning for public transport. This has been an issue hanging around. This discussion has been trying to take place since the beginning of this triennium, and now we're almost at the end and it hasn't. So I am losing patience around it.
Okay. Well, I'm not aware of that.
As are the 2 mayors. No, you won't be, and that's fine. And
it's a fair comment, Alexa.
Well, I think it's fair to say too that, just to add to what Alexa said, 3 successive Dunedin mayors now have asked for this. It goes back a long way. This is not a new issue.
No, well said. Well said. Thanks, Michael. Richard.
In terms of what we might be asking for, I'd say it's a regulatory and legislative background on what the setting is that we're working within. Then it would be aspirations or goals that we're trying to achieve for public transport, so that we understand what good would look like, and then what the issues are to achieving those goals. And then the rest, I think, is what Hilary talked about, is governance decision making later on, but informing us, I suppose, to be able to make those types of decisions would be that type of background. Yeah, there was another point, but that's it. Cool.
Yeah, what she said. Can we have some of that, please?
But him will have other ideas as well, but all of those things would really help me.
There are 2 other factors, I think. One is central government, obviously. There's lots of talk out there that some very significant announcements are due soon from central government on this topic. And the other one is this process that Waka Kotahi have just put us all, well, put the Connecting Dunedin group through about where the members of that group want to see decisions being made and how they should be made. And that report will be, I guess, going to the next Connecting Dunedin City meeting. That could well be germane too to the way in which we as a council workshop this point. So we need to find out best we can
through Doug Rogers, whoever else, about what plans central government are prepared to divulge, and what the agency's survey results are.
Thank you, Michael. There's quite a few moving parts.
There are a lot of moving parts, not to mention Three Waters, which has already been covered as well.
Okay, so been moved, seconded by Michael D. or Deco. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any other matters to do with the chair's report? Or I put that motion that we made to the report. If not, I'll put that motion. Finally, second for
Aye.
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 Against? Carried. 8.2 Chief Executive's report. Thank you.
Move.
For your report. Kate has moved.
Unless he's got stuff to add to it. Sorry, you may want to add to it.
Second by Carmen, would you like to speak to your report?
Look, really simple, short report. Obviously, I'm finding my feet in this organisation. It's like everyone else who starts a new job. There's a significant learning curve, and that means that I'm trying my hardest to catch up on a whole lot of stuff that you know about and I don't yet. But there's some priorities in there which I've touched on. But look, I felt very welcomed by both council members, but also staff. So I've been asked quite regularly whether I'm enjoying my work, and I am. So that's all I really need to say at this time. But I appreciate there's a frustration for lots of people that it takes me a little bit of time to get up to speed with stuff, but it does. And I'll be as quick as anyone else, I promise you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So that we move on to item 9, which is the resolution to exclude the public. That the council excludes the public from the following part of the proceedings of this meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act 1987, and the items are listed there. I'll go through them. Second by Kate. Any discussion? If not, I'll put a motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. That now concludes the